Cue the music.
All right, welcome to Pineapple Podcast. I'm Tyler Christians.
I'm Matt Bork.
And Dave Pugh.
And I'm Josh McLaughlin.
We're going to cover a lot of stuff on this podcast, anything from music, video, audio engineering,
Business. There's no topic that's off
Topic.
personal, yeah. Yeah, pretty much anything.
Cool.
The whole goal of this podcast is to kind of bring people together from the community, music community, give them a place to come and talk and share, their feelings and what they want to do and what they're working on.
Yeah.
Ideally, it'd be great to have people on to come and talk about their, current projects and, even show us a little bit of stuff that they're working on currently.
Some recording stuff
Exactly.
upcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, well, this would be the kind of main configuration that we're going to see most of the time, and kind of sub in and out with guests, or, when COVID allows, we'll be able to have, more people in here, and that's why you see the masks, obviously. We've got our special search and rescue mask from Matt and Search and Rescue. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. No, it's an honor. I think that we have such a wealth. I mean, even amongst us, like the history, the experience, the stuff that we've all been able to be a part of, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly. And then beyond that, each one of us knows people so much farther, that to be able to pass on the things that we've learned, and it's just so exciting. I mean, it's amazing. I wish that there would have been something like this when I was first starting, so that I was able to take leaps and bounds versus crawling in a lot of areas when it came to our career and the things that we learned along the way. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all the extra stuff that you think you need and you have to have, or
Yeah.
I find me and Josh, when we're an early young band, there's always roadblocks we'd place in front of ourselves,
Yeah.
oh, you gotta be rehearsed so much before you play your first show, or you gotta have this many songs, right?
Yeah.
I even do that now with songwriting. You're like, it takes so long until you're like, it's not done. Sometimes it's better just to be like, no, it's good enough. Just move on and keep growing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
always move on to the next one, make the next one better, kind of thing, right?
You got to
Yeah.
test it live, put it in front of an audience, and then you realize, oh, that worked so much better than I thought. They all loved it, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
back to the drawing board.
You definitely. I wish that I would have. I mean, I think myself, I was my own roadblock a lot of the times as well. When you're just your insecurities, the things that you hear, how the things that you see. So you think that you have to be a certain way, and instead of I wish that somebody would have just told me, just be you, just be yourself, just be you. Don't try to be something for other people. And then so that was my biggest roadblock, I think, for myself. And then you're right. I remember when we first started rehearsals, we were doing 5 nights a week for 5 hours a night, and that was adamant that we did that. And it was we're not going to play our first show till it is mint in our own eyes. And yet the whole thing was that instead of focusing on creating an experience for the people that were going to be paying to come see us, I actually look at it now, it's wow, we were really about ourselves. Everything was inwardly focused. Like kind of what you were mentioning, that it's okay, no, we have to have this style, it's got to be this way, and we have to look this way, and we can't all look the same. So I remember even looking back at pictures of my style and being who was I? Because I was trying so desperately to not just embrace who I was, but go with what people were saying, right? So you got to be this way. In fact, I remember one time I was in a hotel room with this person from the industry, and they were really interested in us, and I was so excited to be there. And they said, so none of the guys in the band have any addiction issues? And I was like, no. And I was married at the time, and there was a couple others who were married as well. And they said, so you guys are happily married? They're like, yeah. And you're and you're not alcoholics or anything? I was like, no. And they're like, well, what's your story then? And I remember thinking,
Wait a minute.
yeah, I remember thinking well, that is our story. But then at the same time, now when I reflect back, it actually deeply impacted me that I guess I just don't have a story. And I wish that somebody would have just said, no, you do. Just be yourself, right? Just be who you fucking are, and then let the chips fall. And those people that are going to support you and love you and be into it, they're going to be into it. I fell in love with the bands that I fell in love with because I just fell in love with their music. It wasn't about
The style kind of thing is it it comes second. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not what it's all about,
No.
really, right?
Well, yeah. Like, why did you guys fall in love with like the bands that you guys?
It's the music. I love the songs.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I'd say like
Melody.
reading the lyrics and the little cassette tapes you used to get, you know? I
When they would
enjoyed that.
fold out into a giant picture.
Yeah, and you had to
Yeah.
like put it back in the cassette
Yeah.
tape and rewind it, and
Yeah.
I find I don't like even pay attention to the lyrics until I fall in love with the song, and then I start to kind of memorize the lyrics and then really dive into it. I usually get hooked by the melody first.
Lyrics are the last.
Yeah.
They're the last thing that my brain
Yeah.
clicks with.
Oh.
I just listen to it's all groove. Everything.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even writing, I'd always write, just the melody and sing gibberish. for
Yes,
so
you
long.
would.
Yeah.
Same here.
words were last.
So many shows I'd sing gibberish and no one knew. As long as the sentence
Yeah.
strung together, it didn't matter. Right?
No,
It's
that's
so loud.
totally. I remember not knowing until my wife like filmed me, and I was like, "What? What am I like?" And it legit is gibberish. And then I remember too, one time I had a cousin of mine from Switzerland. He came to spend some time with us, and he wanted to talk. He's a great musician, and studied like I believe he's classically trained now. He's phenomenal. And he came and he wanted to like ask me like, so like, what drugs are you on when you're writing? And I was like, what? And he's like, I've seen you write. Like, what drugs are you on when you're writing? And I remember just thinking, like, until I saw it back and realized, oh yeah, it does look like it, because you're right. There's gibberish. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, I always equated it to like I'm scraping the bottom of my soul. So there are no words to actually a lot of the things that I'm trying to get out and the things that I'm trying to say. And I still find that even too, like when I'm trying to communicate with like my wife or my girls or even just people, sometimes I find that like words fall short. Like, we'll say that I love this microphone. And then I'll turn to my wife and say, and I love you too. And it's like, clearly I love you. And so I find that like sometimes actually that gibberish was saying the deepness that I wanted to say. And I
Yeah.
actually would be then really like pissed off that the words that I had chosen to replace the gibberish did not say what I was trying. So that's when I wish now somebody would have said, focus more on the overall experience. It's not just about the lyrics. It's not just about the melody. It's about like the experience. Like and I was always into that. I always really loved that aspect of it. Like when I would close my eyes on stage, which was 90% of the time as a lead singer, it's because I could see myself like I was back in my living room, and I could be free there, right? I could just be free there, and I could really. I bet you I probably would have done better if I'd have just let the gibberish come out, because
Yeah.
it really is. Did you ever get that where you were just sometimes it felt better?
Yeah, it feels more natural.
Yeah.
Or I think I overthought what the lyrics had to be, and I felt that like I didn't have a lot of. If it was a sad song, like I had it pretty good, so I was like, oh, I don't really have a lot of sad stuff right now to write about. So
Yeah.
I kind of like forced myself to make up stories or like
Yeah.
imagine someone else's situation or something when I should have been focused on just writing fun from my heart, right? The second group I was in, I eventually kind of started to learn that,
Yeah.
right? When it was a little bit more, hip hop, R&B, kind of like a little
Couch cushion.
Couch Cushion Fortress, yeah, and it was more fun, and I was falling in love, so it was kind of just writing about that, and just literally what I was thinking, I would just write, and it was kind of freeing, right? And it was way better,
Yeah.
way better.
Well, I think there's also something to be said for, because I can completely like relate with you. Like I feel really blessed, and like I grew up in a like beautiful family, like musical family. The thing that I struggled with a lot in the beginning was that I was an athlete as well as a musician, and I was told early on in school that you're either one or the other. And it was a huge struggle with me for like forever. I remember just really, really struggling. Like, well, I guess I'm neither then.
I like band class and gym class.
Yeah. But it was interesting because I grew up with two sisters. I grew up with like all my friends throughout school were girls, and I hung out with them. And so I always had these amazingly deep, transparent, and authentic like conversations with them. And then that reflected in my songwriting. Like I was always writing poetry and like trying to write from other people's perspectives, like empathetically and like also sympathetically, and like, and then I'd go to go play sports. And then here we'd be talking about these guys would be sitting there, all they want to talk about is banging chicks or this. I'm like, but I'm hanging out with them, and I know you're not banging them because they're my friends. And like, and I remember just like being like, well, wait a minute, if that's what a jock is supposed to be, and that's not me. But if this is a musician, well, maybe I'm not, like, but because I'm good at sports too, then I guess clearly I'm not a musician. So it was a real struggle for a long time. And again, going back to, I wish somebody would just said, just be yourself, like feel all the feelings, and that's okay. Even like I know I wrote, and I still do write a lot from a very empathetic place where sometimes I feel like it's happened to me. And actually like it was hard for me sometimes because did you ever get that when you're on stage and you're like I would sing a song, and like there's a song that I wrote called "This Isn't Over Yet," and I remember walking into the studio one night and saying, "Guys, just follow me." And something had happened to somebody in my life, and it wasn't to me. And so when I wrote that song, "This Isn't Over Yet," it was all about them and what they were going through, and I felt like it was me, and it hurt so much. I remember just bawling that night, like with my wife, and every time I played that live, which is why sometimes I didn't actually ever want to play it, I could go right back to that night, that feeling, the smell in the room, I remember what I was wearing. I remember everything. So every night that I performed it, it was like knives. I could just feel it every single time, and it made it very, very difficult to perform. So sometimes I wanted to just write like bubblegum.
Yeah.
Where I was like, just be happy. And I fucking loved hip hop too. So I was like, maybe we should just do like, cause I loved moving and stuff. I was like, let's just do stuff that's not so heavy. Cause it really wore on me.
You live in that world, right?
Oh man. Like it wore on me. And I was young and didn't know how to also, I wish I knew then what I know now, but even how to let go. Like I mentioned earlier when we were off air, I was sick for over 90% with strep, of our shows throughout all of our years of touring. Anytime I was in the studio, strep throat. And it's interesting because I went through so much counseling years later to find out that it was like my body's way of telling me.
You're stressed out, man.
Oh man. And it was
Overdoing
like things like the perfection side of it, like letting go, all of those things. And I had amazing bandmates throughout the years, like just such awesome guys, but just not knowing how to deal with my own stress, or even like being able to be free to talk about it, and how much it affected certain things, being fixated on the totally wrong things. And I remember like it eventually led to like 8 days of like insomnia where I was sick and in the hospital, and it was like, I got to make a change. Like something's going, and it's like, so there's all these little things that like, I'm so glad, and I feel very honored and blessed that you guys would actually ask me to be like, part of this with you guys, because I think it's so cool, all the stories, even already, just the little subtleties of like, whoa, you experienced that too? I'm like, oh, I would have just like, what I would have given to have somebody when I was going through it just say like, listen, man, I can completely understand. Like, you're not alone.
It'll get better, hey, you're in that right now. Like, I got actually really sick in October.
Yeah.
And, a couple days I had mono and my throat swollen up. And so I had those like 3 days, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't drink water. And at the time, you're just going so crazy. It's just like it's an insanity you're in.
It's not fun.
Especially right now. It's like anytime you feel anything,
Oh,
you're like,
my
no.
Scary.
It was the greatest thing to hear that I had mono. They're just like, yeah, you're okay.
Yeah.
It's just mono. And I'm like, yes. Like, here's an IV. Come back every morning, get IV until you can drink water again. And audio hallucinations, man. It was like a crazy time.
That's wild.
They weren't scary. It was like kind of like that white noise in the background, And then all of a sudden I'm like, is it like a song playing? And my parents drove me like home from the hospital, and they're like, the radio's not on. And I was like, uh-oh. But it wasn't that bad.
It's like those kids coming back from the dentist.
Oh, those videos. Those are hilarious.
Those are my favorite.
Dude, we can't talk about the dentist, man. I don't have good experiences.
Me neither.
It still is one of those things, man. Like it's funny. Like I literally, like, I try my best, like, put on a brave face for my girls, and like, because I want them to not experience what I experienced with the dentist. But I literally am like, I think about it, I'm like soaked in sweat. Like, I'm just soaked, and I'm like, I'm not even there. I'm not even going. I'm not even scheduled to go, and I get nervous about going.
Dentists.
I had years of braces. Like, I had an extra tooth growing in when I was a kid, so they had to, like, cut it open, pull it out.
Oh my goodness.
And then it turned out they were both stuck up there. Or no, the actual tooth was stuck up there, so I had just like a gap for a long time. So then they actually had to open up the gum, attach a brace to it, all the top teeth braces, and then over 3 years they slowly pulled that tooth down.
Oh, okay.
And then I was happy. I got the
We didn't talk about
off.
this, guys. This is really off topic.
I got the braces off, and then I was like, oh, this is great, it's over. And then the front tooth kind of went, and then I had another braces for another 3 years after that.
How old were
6
you?
years. Basically, I had them from grade 7.
Oh, dude.
8, 9.
So like grade 12, wasn't it? Like you just
Right
got
before
them
high
off.
School,
Like,
I got them off.
She's
yeah.
like till 2017.
Yeah, I just got them off now. Yeah.
He said that's why he's wearing his mask. He doesn't want to show
I
it.
still have them.
He doesn't want to show it. He's like, I don't want to show you guys the Invisalign.
Yeah.
But I just, anyways, today's podcast is brought to you by Invisalign.
Brought to you by Invisalign. Yeah. This is a Pineapple podcast. We talk about dentists and Invisalign.
That's awesome. They've been proudly supporting musicians for years.
Yeah.
I think eating pineapples is really good for your teeth.
Oh,
I
man.
read that somewhere.
Let's get her. Yeah, bananas. My actually, speaking of dentists and bananas, my Annie, my wife, she's got really, really white, great teeth, and we were with my niece.
I was ready. That's a great segue. I was like, wait, I
she
gotta
had
wait.
great teeth, and we were with my niece, and then she said something like, "Oh, you got really nice teeth, Auntie," and I was like, "Oh, what color are my teeth?" And she's like, "Banana." I was like, "How dare you?"
And the mask went back on.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'm gonna go get some whitener, eh?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've been working on it now. It's coming along.
Well, do you want to run us through your musical career? Like,
Wow.
where'd you start? Where
Do you guys
you said
like,
you had a musical family, obviously, right? So
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it's like, how many times have been asked that? And like, I mean, did you ever get asked that? And like, what was the first thing you thought? Did you think?
I automatically, when someone asks me where I started, I think of my aunt's piano when I was a kid and just being like hitting a key and then hearing a note and being like, hey, that sounds like something, and being like, bum 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 bum, be like, hey, that sounds like that. I didn't know it was Beethoven or whoever it was, but I was like, I recognized it, and then I was able to hammer it out, and I remember I started to realize like, oh, maybe I got something there.
Well, did you grow up in a musical family?
Yeah. My stepdad's very.
That's awesome.
And my stepbrother, he actually, I learned a lot of music from him, especially because he was always into like rock and grunge, and so I'd sneak into his room and he had CDs all on the wall, and I'd listen to Soundgarden, Nirvana, and all that, and then.
But didn't you say that? Sorry to cut you off, but didn't you say you went like? But hip hop is what you performed, right? Too?
So I went into that. Like I actually started. I'd say like in high school, early high school, I was into hip hop. Up until about 2001, I was like at Up and Smoke tour. I went and saw that GM Place, and I was even wearing a FUBU shirt.
Oh, I remember those.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, I was pretty bad. I had like like the Eminem hair and everything.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
And then I think after that, it was like the summer. I heard Tool. I heard Sober, and for the first time, and then I was just like, "What have I been doing?"
Yeah.
And I just went straight in the rock rabbit hole.
That's
basically.
crazy. Yeah, I did. Like, I grew up like in a musical family. Yeah, I always think that like I just feel very lucky to because I've always heard and seen the world in a unique way. I think artists do, and I think it's something that we should be embracing more. I see it in my girls all the time, and you guys will understand that. Like, for artists, 1 and 1 sometimes is 2, and then the next day you can wake up and it can be pink or blue. And that's just how an artist's mind thinks. And so I feel lucky that I was able to have that mentality growing up. And I caught on to melodies as a kid. And I see it. It's just so scary how crazy you see it like in your next generation. But like if I hear a song once, I've got all the lyrics pretty much memorized. You said it earlier that you always would listen for melodies. I was always that guy listening to melodies. And I recognized early on that I could recognize a good melody and what made a good melody and how to create a good melody. So I was always writing constantly since I was a little kid. I remember sneaking into my dad, was in bands in college and all that kind of stuff and ran choirs at our church when I was a kid and growing up. And he was like I always joked that he was like the 4th tenor, like incredible singer. And so when I would travel around with my dad to sports, then we'd be in his old work van that only had AM radio, and he would sing, and then he'd always get me to harmonize to things. And what it was doing was, without even me really knowing, was just training me to hear things in a different way. And we talked about it earlier about how hearing a tambourine and just being like, why is it so loud in the mix? And but no one else is hearing it. He just helped me to hear things differently. Or it also became a huge bone of contention, if I could say, like in our arguments as I got older, because the stuff that I loved, like Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, is he would be like, Kurt Cobain's shit and all that stuff is garbage, and because it just wasn't his style. It actually is what really wanted me to not be that kind of a dad to my girls now, because I didn't want to block their creativity in any way. But I mean, I started singing as a little kid, like in the church, and that was awesome. And then from there, actually, as I got older, there was a church that was close to us that all my buddies went to, and we used to skateboard in the parking lot, and it was incredible. And I remember their youth pastor came out one day and was like, he's a good friend of the family. He's like, hey, you ever thought of leading the music or something? And I was like, no, dude, this is super cheeseball. And he's like, I'll let you do it with your buddies in the band. And I wasn't even in a band at the time. I'm like, really? And I didn't even really know how to play guitar. So I went home, grabbed my dad's guitar out of the closet, this classical Takamine guitar, and the next little while I spent going to like concerts and stuff, like all local concerts, and I would sit at the side of the stage and I'd write down where the guitarist's hands were on the frets. I'd just be like, okay, he's got his hands here, he's got his hands here, and I didn't even know what it meant. And then I'd go home and I'd play it, and then just start to put together my own stuff. And then I realized, oh, this is actually how you play like Nirvana's this, and this is how you play Smash Pumpkins or Soundgardens or Tools or whatever it may be. The Beatles. Oh, this is how you do Beach Boys. Oh, this is how you do like Queen stuff. Like, oh, this is how you do this. And then of course hip hop. I loved hip hop. So it was always like, even it's funny because my daughter just asked me to teach her how to play My House. So she's like, okay, ready, Dad? Doom, 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 doom. And I'm like, oh, there we go. Like, and you can see her, like, she's enjoying playing it. And, but yeah, like, that's how I first got in. It was that I remember at the church near us, like, we skateboarded. There was like 400 kids that would come out, like, every week. And we would play. He literally just let us get on the stage with his sound system and just play. And we would play not even church music a lot of times, just play. But it allowed me to like really experiment and try things and see what it feels like and totally fuck up in front of them. But they were all my peers and stuff. And then we would just skateboard. And I was like, and now I look back and I'm like, oh, I really hope there's areas for kids to be able to have that. Because it really did, like, I am forever indebted to him. And he's somebody that's still a part of our family. Like, we have dinners with him every once in a while. I can't thank him enough for giving me that opportunity, for even recognizing it in me. Like, I may not have ever pushed it, because again, that struggle of like, you're either an athlete or a musician. He allowed me then to skate and to play. Actually, it's funny I'm putting it together now, but he allowed me to skate and to play, and it was okay to do that.
He's the one who said you can do both.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, like, and I'm incredibly like grateful and indebted to him, because that kind of became the catalyst of saying like, wow, like, because I always knew that I could find a great melody, and a lot of times chords would get in the way. So it's like, well, how do I then complement the melody that I'm hearing in my head? Because I know that for me, like, I've always struggled with sleep. I'll wake up all the time in the middle of the night with melodies in my head, all the time, still do. And I can't get them out. I'm constantly singing. In fact, again, one of those things that I didn't realize, I'm always under my breath singing. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. And my wife will say, like, she's just used to it now. She's very kind, obviously, because I bet you'd annoy the living shit out of me if it was the reverse. But yeah, like, and so I just, when I started putting it together, realized very quickly that, like, all of a sudden, especially in the church, like, holy smoke, it was like you could do anything with music that way. And then I realized that's not the road that I wanted to go. But at that point, my wife and I had moved, fast forward a little bit, but moved to England with music. And we're out there, got a chance to play some amazing places out there, like even to like the French Riviera, which was like super fun.
Wow.
And then had never really planned on moving home, but some family stuff happened that we knew that was the top priority for us. And I remember my wife and I coming home, and she cried the whole way home on the flight. And we got home and sitting in, I remember just in the silence, sitting on her parents' acreage and just being like, you know, what if we, talking to her and saying, like, what if we pursue what we love, but we don't really make a lot of money at it? Like, would you be okay with that? Because my wife is just so beautiful and so gifted and so talented and so unbelievable. I just want to be more like her. And so I wanted to help facilitate the gifts that she had. How can we do that? And she was 100% on board. And I was like, holy, and she's like, let's start like a band here. And her father, my father, who's, you know, just one of the most amazing men in my life, was like, let's build a studio. And literally days later, he had given me like room in his barn. We built this unbelievable like studio.
That's awesome.
And it got started with that. And then fast forward all these years, we've had, I mean, Yuka's the band that I toured with and performed, was the lead singer. And I feel very honored. I had amazing musicians that I've played with throughout the years and gotten to do a lot of things that I never, like, I mean, I dreamt about it. Like, I dreamt about being able to get into the States to play, or to go across Canada and play, or to go into the UK and Europe, or to go to Japan, which was a dream, like, to do those things and to be able to do them with, like, Dave and Andy, who are in the band. Dave's our drummer and Andy's our bass player, like, two of the most phenomenal, kind human beings that I've ever met, most talented. They fucking play me under the, like, I'm the worst musician when I'm around them. But that's, I think, what makes it so special.
I like surrounding myself in those.
Oh my goodness. When they're jamming and you're like, I don't even want to do anything right now because I'm going to not compliment this.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, they're so, but like, I think that's what works so well. But I definitely feel very, very honored that I've been able to I look at my life and of course there's so many things that I'm like, oh, I just wish, you know, at the time, like, I wish I'd done this. And that's why I think this is such a cool forum for us to be able to talk and to be able to open up and share things about recording and about like live and recording and about performing and about writing and about this and having other people come on, where if there's things that we can help to share from my story, I mean, I'm a completely open book. Like, I have fucked up and screwed up so much that if I can save you even $10,
Yeah.
But I mean, even like one of the things I learned early on, which I will be forever thankful to my father-in-law for, is I'll never forget him. Like I employed him right away as our business manager, and he brought us into our studio. And the first thing he did was he put a chart on the wall, and he's like, "Okay, we're gonna talk about each one of you guys in the band." There was 4 of us in the band at the time. Each one of you guys, what does success look like? And I remember being like kind of a little bit puzzled and realizing it was crazy because that answer got 4 different, or that question got 4 different answers.
That's interesting.
And I was like, one guy's, I think one of the responses was to be like a millionaire within 6 months. And it was like, holy shit.
Bold.
Like, but the thing was that to me, like I look back on it and like when I was a little kid, like, and I remember my bass player and I talking about this because I think we had very similar stories. It's like, I remember in school, they were like, okay, what do you guys want to be when you grow up? And I remember like, you know, thinking of like, obviously like at the time I was really into Michael Jordan and into soccer and into this and skateboarding. I was like, because I skateboarded like freaking crazy as a kid. I still do. And then I remember it was my turn and I was thinking like, wow, like everybody's saying all these cool things, but I just assumed everybody would say rock star, right? Like I'm like, but it was like, nope. And that's one of the things that like success to me, like I feel very, very like, just feel very blessed that I've been able to, like, I feel very successful in that sense that like, that I've been able to do things that I dreamt about as a kid. And now at 41, like I look back, I'm like, holy shit, I got to do a lot of unbelievable things that I just hope my girls get to just experience and surpass. Like I want to be there to facilitate them in any way, whatever their dream and their passion is. In the same way with other musicians, I would love it if it's like, you know, if they had all these questions like, well, do we need to do this? Because there were so many of these moments that I remember labels, management, people that were like, you know, we had to sign with, like it was always like, you got to do this.
Yeah.
And then we missed out on these like insane opportunities or these cool things or things that I thought were the most important, like you were saying. And I look back, I'm like, that would have not made us any more successful. But then what's the metric that you're using for success?
Yeah.
And that's something that like I would say to anybody listening now is like, if you're in a band, like you've got to talk to the other members and like talk to them about like, so what does success look like to you? Because it may look totally different to you.
Yeah.
And then to me. And then actually when we talk about it, you may realize we're actually not supposed to be in the same band together because it's going to clearly not work and you're only as fast as your slowest member. So I just remember being like, even it's crazy, like my father-in-law, man, I feel very, very lucky to have him in my life as that person. He was like a shit kicker, kept me
that's
in
good
check.
to have.
And it's one of those things that like, oh my goodness, like I just think like how he saved us from so much. Yeah. Anyway, that was a long ramble.
That's
Sorry about that.
yeah, it's kind of funny. You get lots of advice from, you know, different advice from different people, right? Like I was lucky too to have like my stepdad give me lots of advice because he came from like he's a booking agent and also a touring musician as well. So he had lots of advice, you know, for booking shows and for, you know, dealing with band members and stuff, which I wasn't good at listening to for that. And especially with dealing with band members and stuff, like I like being Mr. Nice Guy, like Josh will know. And I don't even like conflict, you know. So it's like, oh, you know, it'll be good, everything's great, right? Where sometimes it's a business, you got to think like a business and be more serious, right?
Yeah.
Or times like Josh and I, we were in a band called Cetra, and we were in a battle of the bands, and it was like for 10 grand and at Long McQuaid and a whole bunch of different stuff, and we were actually doing really well. And even the host was like, oh, yeah, you guys got this. You guys got this.
You had a ton of people coming out. Your
Yeah.
sister worked at the pub where
My
the
sister at the
competition
pub.
was at. The deck was stacked.
The deck was stacked.
We were going to win.
The guy was like, yeah, you guys got this. And we felt pretty good.
You got the stuff.
And then like something happened. The show got delayed a week. And,
Exactly, 1 week.
One week. And I had just got back from like Disneyland and I felt fine. And then a week after that, I started getting sick and like I couldn't shake it. And it was like, you know, any mucus is in your lungs. And it was like, no matter what, I could maybe sing a note, but then something would come up. And I'm like, oh, it shakes. So I'm like, this is not good. And we left it till like last minute. I kept trying to see what I could do. And I eventually I just couldn't do it. Like it would have made it too bad. So we ended up dropping out. We went there and supported the other bands and cheered them on.
That
and
was
stuff.
sad.
And that was very sad. But it was just funny.
He clearly hasn't let go of it.
Yeah, that was very sad. Yeah.
You owe him that split.
Yeah.
But
I remember dude, the prize was to open, get this, for Wide Mouth Mason of, you know, Canada.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about them.
We got to open. You could have got to open for Wide Mouth Mason. That was
we
such a
did.
cool prize.
But we opened for them.
Oh, wait.
Remember I wore sandals and
The-
everyone got mad at me.
What kind of sandals? Like
Just
Birkenstocks?
open toe sandals.
no.
Not good.
Like those. Oh my goodness.
Wait,
With-
then what was the grand prize then? It was winning for someone else.
Kook Show, that band won it.
No, but who did you get to open for?
I don't remember. It was a bigger band. I remember that.
I thought
but-
the winner was Widemouth Mason.
No, we opened for Wide Mouth Mason. I just remember being like, those guys are so tight. And
Yeah, they were
such a
way
good
better.
dance. Yeah, they were really good.
They were really good. They
But
were
yeah,
tight.
no. What I was getting at though is the funny advice from like my stepdad about that, because one of his best friends played bass for Trooper, and so he's seen them play live all the time and knew Ray McGuire, the singer. And one of the things he said to me was like, Ray McGuire would be throwing up out the side of the stage, and then he'd come back and he'd start singing and just keep going with the show. And I'm like, oh, thanks. Like,
Show must go on.
yeah, I would be doing that if I could. You know what I mean? If it wasn't ripping up phlegm every time I sang.
It's funny though how like it feels like those are like I remember getting again, I was sick all the time. And I know now that like what I sometimes I think that like just because I happen to be gifted in writing music and writing melodies, it doesn't necessarily mean it's what I was meant to do. And so, but I look at like it and I had a ton of fun. But I was always sick. So there's this like level, and ultimately too, like I wasn't the lead singer that thrived off of like sometimes I would look like I loved Bono. I loved watching him. I was like, wow, what a great frontman. But you could see he just loved sucking it up. Whereas I was like, close my eyes and like I enjoyed that aspect. I enjoyed seeing people really like the music, like, the experience like affecting them. I thought that was really cool, but it's not like it was like being on stage was not charging my batteries like at all. But I do remember like getting like, big shows opening up before big. And I can't remember who it was they were supposed to open up for. It was a big, huge show. And I got so sick, laryngitis, like zero voice at all.
That's the
And
worst.
didn't cancel. Got to the I think it was in like one of the like it was the Hard Rock with somebody, I think, or something. I can't remember. And I remember walking on the stage. I'm like, well, I got nothing. And it came for the show, and it was gone right after the show was done.
Wow.
And I just remember being like, talking to my wife, like, what is going on? And I think that was a definite clear indicator. It's amazing how like I think about all these like little things now, and I'm just like, oh wow. Like I remember when I finally like did counseling, and it was like, to really like kind of peel those layers back, like what is going on? Like why am I constantly sick? And then when the doctor at the hospital hands your wife the sleeping pills, because he's like, these are highly addictive for artists, so you're gonna want to hang on to it. I was like, okay, I think it's time to make some changes. Like it was kind of that like, and it did help a lot actually. Like there was a lot of times after that then I did not get, because I started realizing, like we talked earlier, like the things that weren't, and it came from the experience. I just wish that number one, you said something like that, you talked about listen, right? And it's something that like I would definitely encourage other musicians is to like, whether you're in the studio, whether you're working with somebody, is listen. And again, who are you listening to? Because that's the other thing too, is there's a lot of shit out there. There's so many people that have opinions, but it doesn't mean that that's who you should be listening to.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something too, is like to be very, very cautious of who you listen to, even in your own band, who you're listening to.
Yeah.
But I know that there was a lot of like, there's just so many little things like that I wish that I would have just been a bit more tuned to who I was as an individual, focus a little bit more on finding out who I am versus what I do. Like, just don't be so wrapped up into what I was doing.
Yeah.
We don't get really taught that too much though. Like it's kind of a bit like, even now, like with like search and rescue, like who I work with, I spend a lot of time talking to clients about who they are. And it's interesting how when I ask a business, an owner or somebody's like, so who are you? They'll go into like, well, I'm a, and they'll list their credentials. I'm like, that's actually what you do, but that's not who you are. And they're like, well, then I don't think I understand the question. I was like, well, what you can do is you can go home tonight and maybe like, have a glass of wine with your partner and talk and say like, so who do you think I am? Like, ask them. And they're like, oh, I can't talk about that stuff with them. And I said, it's interesting because one story that came out, my daughter, last year we were given a above ground pool, and I was like, oh, it's probably going to be garbage. And it ended up being this huge, gorgeous, like above ground pool. And my daughter loves water, but is terrified of putting her face under the water. And I used to like do swimming lessons and stuff. And I was like, I could teach her, but she's going to always know that if the shit hits the fan, I'm going to grab her. She's my little girl, right? And so I just wanted her to learn on her own so that she could be proud of herself, that it wasn't reliant on me, that she knew that she had the strength, the courage. And when I talk about bravery too, I'm not talking about like, jumping off a cliff into into a lake. That's just, anybody can do that. I'm talking about like trusting your gut, that bravery where you trust your gut. And so as the summer went on, she was slowly doing it. And then by the end of the summer, like I'll never forget, I remember just like tears in my eyes. Is like, it's funny, like having kids, the most proudest moment of my life is still not even close to as proud as I am of them when they do things like,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. And she goes, Dad, check this out. And she goes from one end and she swims under and pops up and has the hugest, proudest, like she is so proud of herself. And she's like, are you proud of me, Dad? Well, as soon as she got out of the water, and I was like, oh man, like just tears. And I'm like, I am so proud of you. And later that night, I'm laying in bed with her and we're reading and stuff. And we're talking. I said, hey, I just wanted to talk to you again about that swimming. Like, how did that make you feel? And so we're talking about that. And we talk every day about practicing bravery, curiosity, and courageousness with my girls. And I said, I just want you to know that, like, when I said I was proud of you, I was really proud of you. And I explained to her because she has worked so hard the whole summer to get to that place. I said, but what I'm most proud of you of about that experience is that I'm proud that you practiced bravery, you practiced courageousness, and you practiced the curiosity, and then in the end, you succeeded and you had fun. And I was like, if I was only proud of you for just the act of going underwater, what happens when you leave and there's no pool? Like, am I not proud of you anymore? And she's like, she could get it at 7. She's like, no. She's like, you're proud of who I am. And I was like, that's the thing. And that's why when I talk to people, like, who are you? And I wish somebody would have said that to me, like, who am I? Like much like that, like, amazingly brilliant question my father-in-law asked me about success. Is like, who are you, right? Who are you as individuals? Who are you as, like, because I remember just being way too inundated listening to just bullshit coming left, right, and center at me of, like, you know, you got to look like this, you got to sound like this, you don't do, like, drugs, like, so you got to do this and you got to do that. And I remember just going like, okay. And I was, how you explained, like, just the nice guy was definitely that guy that, like, genuinely in my heart, I'm like, I just want to, I want to see people succeed and be happy in this. So I was very like, okay, sure. Like, not out of like, but like, even if somebody said, like, you know, do you like blah, blah, and they list a band, I'd be like, I'd always try to find the positive versus even say, like, no, man, I'm not even really into that. Yeah. Like, because I'd be so nervous to offend somebody with, like, instead of just be like, no, like, it's okay to say, like, yeah, I'm not really into that. And I really, really wish somebody would have told me that aspect of it, of, like, finding out who I was. And I think that I would have actually not been sick as much. I wouldn't have been as hard on myself. I would have been way more open to other people's ideas in the band. Because fuck, I was like, I look back now and I just can't thank my bandmates enough for being gracious with me. Because I know they saw my face when it was like, it's like, oh, go ahead, you can play your idea. Because it's not gonna be as good as mine. But go right ahead. You can too, because it's just still not gonna be as good. But isn't that nice how I let you guys play your idea? So now let's play my idea. Yeah. And it's like, I just think that, like, wow, like, I was closing doors for myself in so many ways. And then again, though, if my metric for success was way off, then I think that I, like, wouldn't even have enjoyed the process. So, like, there's, like, many times, like, in the studio that, like, I told you that story about how, like, driving down to Seattle, having to, like, I'm trying to roll these Dr. Z and all these matchless and different amps and stuff, and I gotta have this, and they're so expensive, and this one's custom, it's gonna be built just for me, blah, blah, and I, like, then I get to the studio and, like, we get to record, and it's like, this is shit. Like, the tone takes it's so big, it takes everybody's tone. So now we're trying to dial it, dummy it as dummy down as much as, and it's like, fuck it, let's not even use it. And I wish somebody would just said, like, that's what.
What'd you end up using instead?
I ended up using Dr. Z. Oh, no, sorry, Dr. Z. She's my Vox. Yeah. Just
a little one then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just cleaned it up and, like, kept it, like, very, because I realized where I needed to sit in the song, it deserved that. And it's like, if somebody was said, like, okay, it's cool, like, just understand, though, like, you don't need to spend all that money. And I ended up selling the amp, the Dr. Z was gone, and, like, yeah, funny. No. It's funny, though, hey, like, just the little things that you're like.
I catch myself doing that, too, where you're like, oh, that won't sound as good, that can't. Right? And then you put it on, you're like, oh, wow.
That was actually better. Oh, no.
Like.
Well, it's funny. It's like the mic shootout we did just a while ago. So we went through and we ran through all of the mics that we have, and, like, there is a difference, obviously, and you know, the nice ones sound nice and everything, but you can get away with any one of them, really. They all sound good.
You're gonna be processing it after, right?
You could slap up a bunch of SM58s and get a decent recording if you know how to place them. So the gear is not always as important as how to use it, right? Even
being creative, just using what you have. I mean, you don't need to have. If you have, like, a really nice room mic, sometimes that captures a lot of your jam sessions, or you're trying to work out a song and want to hear it back. You're like, we got to get it done in a studio. It's like, how about we just put the mic in a spot? It doesn't distort. Yeah. You can sit back and kind of step away from yourself, because when you're playing, it was really hard to, like, figure out, what does this actually sound like from the outside? Look, you know how when you hear your voice back for the first time, and you're like, that's not what I sound like. Oh no, no.
It's the room you're in more so.
Why am I so nasally?
I always, I never liked hearing my voice back.
No.
So what did you guys do with the, you said you guys built the studio.
Yeah.
So what did that
so that was
entail?
It's interesting because like I look at it now, I'm like, oh man, I want to be that kind of again, it's actually falling right in line with what we're talking about jumping on other ideas. My father-in-law didn't even second guess it. He was like, yeah, this is what, and it's interesting because so many people, when I kind of came back from England with my wife and we decided to like pursue what we loved, and she is a phenomenal photographer. She's been my boss for the last like 17 years. Like I've never worked for anybody greater than, like, she's phenomenal. And so she got into photography, and then I started Yucca and auditioned guys that I didn't even know. Like it wasn't like a bunch of buddies getting together. Like it was, people knew me from singing and stuff, and then we wanted to do that. But yeah, he jumped on board, and they had like this old barn on their property, and he's like, let's build it. And so we researched how to like build soundproof, like a whole soundproof studio, because we didn't want to also annoy all the neighbors. But we had this, so like it was a huge studio for like us. I think it was like 40 feet by, anyways, it was awesome. We built a room in the room, like made it like soundproofed, and then I went around to all the neighbors in the area because it's all on acreage and said, hey, listen, this is who we are. We're going to be in the area doing this, but we'll always respect the like sound curfew. So like rehearsal started at 5, we were done by 10. And interesting, like, and he jumped on it. He helped build it with me and stuff, and it was some of the most amazing experiences of doing it with him. And it's interesting, like he believed in me, like my family did too, like when I was a kid. And it's interesting seeing the people that like along your journey believe in you, and kind of like it's amazing because like I was explaining to on the weekend, I just put in like a gold faucet in our kitchen. I know jack shit about like putting in like plumbing, but my buddy is a professional plumber, and it's weird that I feel like in the morning at tea, and then I FaceTimed him and said, okay man, like here we go. And yet when he just said, he's like, it's all good. Like, and it was just a little FaceTime, and all I needed to know was it's all good. And he was there on FaceTime, gave me that confidence to like not, and I also too, I'm a very patient person, so I don't rush things, because I also know too that, studies have come back where they show people, like, even I'm listening to this, like I'm reading this book right now on empathy, and they talk about how people are put in a situation when they're rushed, they actually will not show empathy just because they're rushed.
Yeah, they don't have time to.
Yeah.
Versus when they have the time, they will show the empathy.
Yeah.
So I've always been that person though. Like even when I was playing sports and this, I've always said that like, it still happens to this day. And like even why I was like even decent at skateboarding was, when I'm in mid action when it comes to playing sports or whatever it may be. And I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but things are in slow motion. Like even when I was on stage performing, like I don't know, did you ever get that? Like I would be playing, and I'd be using both feet, one on a volume pedal, one's doing something else on another pedal. I'm playing and I'm singing at the same time, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool that they're here. It's great to see them.
It is funny
and
how
it's
you
and it's in slow motion where I'd be like, oh, it's so nice to see the Tyler's grabbing a drink at the back of the bar.
Isn't that
right?
funny?
Like as I'm playing, and it's weird, but it was and then I'd look back at the video later and be like, oh shit, that wasn't in slow motion. Or like skateboarding, I'd know when my board was flipping, I'm like, okay, here it comes around. I'm just gonna put my feet on it right now, and it would slow it down. And did you ever get that experience?
I used to get it if I'd screw up. I'd be like, oh no. And I'd be like singing, thinking like, how am I going to get back on? I'm like, I'm not on the right spot. And you just kind of be thinking ahead, or you'd be like, oh, let's see.
Those panicked looks over to me. And I'd be like, I'm just going to start the chorus right, big end. Now my fingers go down. I'm like, we're back on.
You should have just pointed your hand at him like he's out.
It's him.
One thing I got good at when I was doing, I was playing keyboards in like a cover band, and some parts, like I'd be like, a little bit not 100% there on, and I'd be like, oh, what's wrong with my level here? Oh, no, I'm playing. I don't know what's going on.
But with your elbows?
Yeah.
Just like make it really obvious.
Yeah, no, that definitely happens sometimes. But yeah, not as much of just like, seeing people walk around, but yeah, definitely if I screwed up. That's a big skill to get, is when something goes wrong. When I was able to get better at that made me feel a lot more comfort on stage, because like even if something does go wrong, you can kind of keep your composure, because it's easy to things will slow down, but if they slow down too much to like a standstill, then you're just screwed, right?
It's funny. It's almost that cliche of like, if you start strong and you finish strong, everything else in the middle kind of gets blurred into
It gets blurred out.
But it's that experience that Matt was talking about, was like the audience is just there, like soaking it all up and seeing the lights and the smells and the sounds, and they're finding cool people to like dance or mosh with, whatever kind of show you're at, or they're up at the bar, and then I don't know. It's fascinating that.
Yeah.
My favorite moment where I like had that happen and I was able to like pull it off was it was for that Unapologetically Her show. Basically Annie was helping organize that, and a couple of the daughters were going to sing Shallow with one of the other speakers, and so I was basically in charge of doing the backing track, and I built it up with, I was going to play acoustic live and do harmonies, but I had violins and piano that were gonna, as long as in my in-ear I started after 8 counts, as long as I played it to that, the violin and piano would come in together in the chorus, and it'll be great.
No, I see where this is going.
So basically I'm like, okay, this should be great.
What could go wrong?
And there's basically, the start of Shallow, it repeats the riff twice and then the vocals start. And one of the little ones, she started right away. And then I just remember the slow motion happened right away, because I was like, I did think, I'm like, if this happens, I need to have a plan, right? So you can see me in the camera, actually. You'll see me kind of just like, oh. And I slowly walk sideways, go over to my laptop, and I just hit stop. And then I go back and we just did it all acoustic and vocals. Because I was thinking, like, all I could think of is if this little girl gets to the chorus and it's the wrong part, how that would feel if it was me. And I was like, I cannot have this happen to her. Right? Like, she's just, like, she's a new singer. She's
You made the right call. You made the right call.
And it would have just been...
And it all worked out.
And it's interesting, because it's one of those things, too, that, like, when you stop, or if you have to start, like, again, how it feels humiliating, yet at the same time, who cares?
Yeah.
But at the time when you're in it, you're like, oh, like, I remember just like us, like that room of like, oh, if we had to start again, like how humiliating. It's like, but no one cares. Like, and it's one of those things that, like, especially when you're starting out, all of those people in that room love you no matter what anyway, which is why they're an improper metric when it comes to asking them, so what do you think of that song?
It was great.
Amazing.
I loved it.
And you're like, you love everything I do.
I felt that way too. Yeah.
And it's like, no, like, but I'll go back to you. Like, we were talking about like building the studio. We went around to like all of our neighbors, and I told all them like what we were doing. And then years later, I remember them saying, yeah, like my daughter, like our neighbors would come and their daughters now had moved out and this, and they said, oh, they used to love going to sleep, like, and they could hear like just the kick and just a subtle.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I never knew that. But like, that was cool to me. Like, things like that made me realize, oh, like the community was behind us as well. And we had actually, our very first concert we ever did, we held in our property on our acreage. We brought everything. We had a huge touring sound system, everything. So we brought it all out, lights, crazy stuff. And we had hundreds of people show up into the yard. And I remember...
where was this?
In British Columbia. And I remember that we had...
That's really general.
Okay.
We had, Canada.
Yeah, Canada. British Columbia, Canada.
Yeah, we had, I think like it was like a week later, somebody had told somebody, like, man, it follows the Salmon River. And apparently miles down, they were like, that's Matt Bork. And they could hear me because it traveled down. And I thought, that is so cool. And like, and it's funny because I remember the police showing up at like 10 and we'd finished. Like, we deliberately did it, and we invited everybody to come out. And it was this like really cool moment of letting them know that we weren't trying to hide that we were, playing or anything. Because a lot of times, we were worried that we were going to distract people. But we also weren't, it was good. So it wasn't just like craziness and stuff like that. But yeah, like I remember just like thinking like how neat it was that the community, like our community where, we were living was like really behind us as well. And then that also made it challenging. Like, I don't know about you guys, but what was it like for you guys? I couldn't stand playing local, to be honest. I hated it. I shouldn't say hated it. I told my daughter we don't really use that word. Yeah. I really disliked it because I am not one to, I don't like to beg people to come to shows.
Yeah.
So that was a really tough, like, when you, you're like, oh, sweet, we're playing at this place, blah, blah. And now they're like, oh, crap, now I have to sell this to everybody. And that's something they do not tell you. What is like, yeah, you're a small business. You're a business. Yeah. You're an entrepreneur. Nobody is sitting at home thinking, I wonder what the boys are up to. I wonder what the girls are up to, man. Like, nobody is thinking that. And they don't tell you that you need to go to them. You need to initiate that relationship. And I think that's why, me being a storyteller and even yourself being a storyteller, it's something why I've found so much success even in our marketing agency now with Search and Rescue, is that I always found ways to come up with stories, like to utilize stories to capture people's attention. Stories have been capturing people's attention forever. And that's something that, like, even the story of testing mics and stuff, like, it's something that, man, I remember being in recording. I think I might have told you that one time where we were at one studio and I was like, oh, I got to use this Neumann. Like, it's just, it's the mic I got to use, right? Like, and then they had the mic test set up and I remember like singing into it, like, this is it. And then when we went back and listened, I was like, crap.
I've been wrong my whole life.
Yes. I've been wrong my whole life. And it's like, and it was one of those things though, that like I needed the proper person to kind of guide me through. And when they educated me on it, that it's like, listen, like there's been some of your favorite albums, the guys sang on like a crappy 57. Like it's like it's just the right room, the right voice, the way that it hits.
He sang that in the bathroom because it sounded the greatest reverb.
Yeah.
Totally. Right? You just, those kinds of things that, like, oh my goodness.
What about, it's weird getting used to working with a producer. Like, did you have a producer with you?
We did. Yeah. Yeah, we did actually. Did you guys ever?
Yeah, we had one that we were working with.
A lot of growth. Every album we did. Yeah.
Oh, are you serious? Every album?
Well, actually, we did.
Yeah, every single. There's always someone who kind of coached us into getting us into a studio.
No way.
Playing to a click track when you're a kid, you're like, oh, the metronome, go away, grandma. Like, what is this? Music lessons from when I was 5. But it's like that learning to play to the click properly and having the band realize like, you got to get on the computer. It's got to be on time. Like the drummer, when the drums aren't on time, we're all gonna know.
Bad, yeah.
That's a whole thing in itself. The amount of musicians that it's like comfortable with click, not comfortable with click. It's such a simple thing because it's a metronome basically, right? And you think, oh, that keeps you in time, but some people, if they're not used to playing to click tracks, it throws them off. They can't play anymore. It just
amazing too, the difference that like a beat or two per minute really for me it affects my feeling about a song. Like I know like, oh man, when you're in the right groove and it's that one beat slower, one beat faster, and you just in your heart you're like, oh, this is not quite as in that perfect spot that I want it to be in.
I remember I can't remember, we were on tour with some band and I do not remember who it was, but I remember what they said to me. And I remember that they were saying that tracks and click was the killer of their live show, because it just took away all that. Yeah. I remember actually touring. I'm not going to name the band, but I remember touring with the band, and we were on tour. We got asked to stop the tour to come and open up for them as this band was way bigger than us, like, you know, the big tour buses and all that stuff. And we were like, holy shit! And here we are pulling up in our parents' vehicle with like, you know, our band's trailer behind us. And then we went on to open for them, and we're like just stealing every show. And I remember they got like super pissed off at us for like, you know, winning over the crowd, which we thought was what we're supposed to do, like to compliment them. And I'll never forget, because it was a huge eye opener for me that they were on stage. And I remember standing at the side of the stage, and like everybody's engaged, and like everybody knew their songs. They were kind of on the radio and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then they went off stage, and everybody was cheering for them to come back on, but everything was so tracked, they had no songs left.
Oh no!
So they couldn't just.
Yeah, the show was done.
It was done. It was actually like just done. And I kept thinking like, just go back on stage, man. Like just play anything. And like they're like, no, it's done. We don't actually have any more songs. And I was like,
how? How do you not have another song?
I was like, wait a minute, what? Like you can't even just like. And then it was a big eye opener to me that I was like, oh wow, like I never thought about.
It could be that programmed, right? Like
processed and programmed. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we had like I remember being excited about getting into the studio. Like it's just, you know, begging family members for money. Being so excited and again, you know, going back to like choosing the right people to be part of your team, and not realizing that like the allure of like somebody going, come to my studio, right? It was like, ooh, like, and you just instantly, it was like all my other, like we were talking earlier about like healthy anxiety, and just like back in the hunter-gatherer days, sitting around a campfire and just literally, you know, hearing a kind of a noise and knowing that there was something out there that potentially might want to eat you, and your sensitivities, your anxiety, it would actually be a healthy, like your hearing was more tuned, your vision, your smell. And I think like when we'd hear, let's go in the studio, all those good things would go out the window, and it was just like, yeah, I'm in. And like, and so it was like not even like choosing the right producer. I remember just like now when I look back and I'm like, oh wow, no, that was not the right person for us. They were literally just wanting to do their own thing. And I felt like it was almost me being invited in. It was like the band had nothing to do with it. It was like the producer was that was the person in charge. Yeah. And so all of a sudden the band was gone. And it was like, and the producer, and I remember that's why in the later years we ended up building our own studio. Like the studio that I talked about, we built, which is now where my home is. Oh, well, I just gave it away. So that's where my home is now. But we had to destroy that studio, which was a crazy day, man. I got to get in an excavator and destroy the studio that I built by hand.
No way.
And all those memories. And one of the coolest things, this is to me though, like, and I get tears telling the story, is that like years later, or not years later, but like, so I destroy it and the new home gets built, and then we got to announce that we were having a baby, and her room is right above
Oh,
it.
that's cool.
And it was the coolest thing. So we got to set up a bassinet with a light, and I remember we walked people when there was only just the 2x4 or the 2x6 walls up, and we walked upstairs, and there's the bassinet, and she was a little sweet pea at the time. And so now to be able to know, to have that history, I was okay with taking it down. But yeah, in that time, then we moved our studio. We kind of moved around to different places while we were finding a new home, and then we built a new studio at another location, then another location, and then we realized how much more effective we were getting the right team members, so the right input into like actually creating the music, and then realizing, wow, we could do a lot of it with the right people. And that's something that I know, even talking to you, that it's like, it is essential to realize that, like, yeah, I mean, we courted so many studios, and each one had something amazing that I wanted to record in. Like, and I didn't even get a chance to travel the world doing it, but we'd also gotten a chance to sit down with other bands. And one of the things that, like, I've always been appreciative, like, that my wife has taught me so much about is really listening. We talked about that earlier, but it's like really truly listening. And so when we would get together, whether we're on tour or whether we're at shows, playing with other bands and getting to pick their brains, I would just listen. And my wife we've always been that way. Like when we lived in England, we would sit and have tea, and we would just sit and listen and like just observe. And that's also part of why I'm so successful in what I do with the career that I am in now, and with search and rescue marketing, in content creation, in strategy and consulting and working with them, is because I listen to, oh, it's funny, man. We were just talking about, what was the the Simpsons, the ghost notes.
Yeah, it's the notes you don't hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the notes you don't play.
So listening, that's one of the things that, like, my wife is so phenomenal at, is that she's not only listening to you and really engaged in what you're saying, but she's listening to what your eyes are saying, which is why I have no problems with masks, because your eyes don't lie.
Yeah.
She's listening to what your body language is saying. She's listening to even what you aren't saying is saying. And that was something that I really listened to amongst, like, we would listen to other bands and like, well, why did you choose here? And I remember one band telling me this horror story of spending, they got signed for like over the 6-figure mark. And I was like, holy crap. And then I was like, wait, 7-figure? Like, it was like, you got what? And I remember just being blown away. And like 3/4 of it was gone to just the recording process.
It's crazy.
And I was like, wait, and it was a horror story.
Which is insane. Like,
it's insane.
Like, there's no need for that.
But if that's what you said is you're like, that's success though, then it's like, then, you know,
was having that $1 million record.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at it too, it's like, if you look at the guys that are like 55 years old that have like the house, and all of a sudden they get the sports car, and that's the midlife crisis. And midlife crises are just because their metrics are just fucked. They realize that that's going to bring me happiness. Then they get it and they're like, why am I not happy? And that's why I think it's important to like realize, like, you know, when we're talking about these things as like a band, is talking to your bandmates about things like, you know, what do we want to look for in a good producer? And I think honestly, using you guys as a fountain of knowledge to be able to say, listen, these are the things that you do need to consider. Like, do you want somebody that's going to completely like
break you down to nothing and build you up from scratch? Like, okay, everything you have is okay, but it's garbage. Yeah, I mean, it's not good, but you're like, we need a lot of work.
Yeah, and I remember getting that, and that's what I struggled with, because then it was like, now I was like, wait a minute, so who am I then? Because I thought this was. And then it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't sing about this then. Maybe I shouldn't write these songs about that. Oh, I don't know enough about this, so I can't write about it. It's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
I've never questioned John Lennon for why he wrote the way that he wrote. It's just phenomenal, and it impacted me, and I loved it. And it inspired me so much to write music the way that I wrote, in a sense. Same with, you know, my dad and I singing Beach Boys. Like, I specifically do certain melodies that even didn't really, like, because our musical style was kind of like that. Well, it's like, it was like, we always like to say it was kind of that Muse, Radiohead, Imagine Dragons kind of style. But I enjoyed throwing in those, and actually Imagine Dragons has it in there, but like that kind of Beach Boysy like harmonies that you're like, they're so cool, but they're so cool that they inspire you. And it's like, so I know that, like, there was times where, like, even being in the studio, I was like, why, like, this isn't us at all. Like, and again, I was sick every time I was in the studio. And I think sometimes it's like, maybe my body was actually telling me,
something.
This isn't the right place, man.
Get out.
So the most success that we found on it, we did an album called Rebuilding the Fallen Empire, and that was the first one we did all by ourselves. And it was the most fun that we had.
Self-produced?
Yeah. And our bass player, who's phenomenal with recording, he had a studio and stuff, and so we did it all there. He recorded everything, but we self-produced everything, and then we sent it off. I believe it was a mixer who had worked with Muse. We sent it off to them, and he did the mixing for us, which was really cool. But to be honest, man, like our bass player's a genius. Like his stuff that came back, I was just equal. I was like, holy shit! Like it was pretty awesome. And then from there, I know that when we decided to kind of take a break from touring and stuff, because we had all, I mean, I adore those guys, but we all had said that like our priorities were our families, and success to us. Like my legacy is not in dollar bills. So to me, that wasn't success to me. So being able to know that like we could at any given point stop and say, listen, is it okay if we have families and take time? Absolutely. Even though it meant, because we were all three of us, we were a three-piece at the time, all three of us were on board with the same thing. So sure, we miss a lot of certain aspects of it. I don't actually miss touring at the moment, but I sing and get that part of my battery charged every single day. I write every day. I'm constantly like with my daughters. Like, but I remember like after that album, like I remember writing a lot, like Shadows of the Moon. We talked about that as one of the songs. I remember writing that with my daughter. I've written so much stuff with my daughters, and I got asked to play like an acoustic show. When you were talking about that, that's what got me thinking of it. And so I brought out my pedal board that I use with all my amps, and which I've now simplified down to the Vox AC30. And I remember like hooking it up to the acoustic, and I remember just being able to like do like really cool stuff like pads and this to make it sound like there was more going on, but just still keep it like ethereal and like very ambient and flowing. And my daughter, I had never played a show with my daughter. She was old enough to stand beside a stage, and I started playing Shadows of the Moon and just bawled because she could sing it, and I'd never experienced that before.
That would have been cool. And
it was this intimacy of like, holy, like, and it was just like, and I remember just bawling, and it was interesting because I thought, like people are gonna, I don't know how they're gonna respond to that, because I cried and cried. And like hard to like, you know, when you're talking about like get your voice back.
Yeah.
But that's me. Like I've always been an emotional person, and I'm more connected to that than ever. And I really truly honestly feel that like the feelings that each one of us have as an individual were meant to be felt. And it's okay to talk about those things, and it's okay. And I remember people coming up after saying that's probably one of the best like shows I've ever seen.
Be a pretty dick move of them to be like, yeah, that wasn't a good look, man.
I was expecting that, right? Like, and I
but
really,
who would do that? I mean, it's authentic. That's kind of rare to see someone actually sharing a real feeling. That's not an easy one to talk about.
So what you're saying now, I would have loved if somebody would have just told me that.
Yeah,
that's okay.
The years, right? And so going back to then even with the producer, then getting the right metrics of having somebody truly speak to you and say like, listen, like, we may not be the right fit for you. I do that all the time, even with my work with search and rescue marketing. It's like, I might be talking myself out of a job here, but I believe there's enough to go around, and I also want the best for you and for you. So I want you, like, I would love to have an experience like of working with you as a team, not as a, you're just going to, or I'm going to dictate you, because I also would go into your studio to trust you because of the gifting that you have, the talent, the ability, the wisdom, the knowledge, all of that stuff, so that we both get enjoyment out of it. And I didn't get that experience working with producers. They're nice guys, don't get me wrong. Like everybody that we'd had a chance to work with was always nice. But when we courted people, when we had the funds to like, you know, get, like, I remember just being like, no, it was easy no's for me every time. No. Yeah. And it wasn't like a question of, oh man, yeah, but it was like, no, like it's a matter of, we would go in and we would come out being just whatever they wanted us to be then. So now it's like, so what, every album you have to then figure out, and again, going back to like who we are. It's like, so now who are we?
Yeah.
Right? We went in as this, but now we're not this. Now we can come on. So that's why a lot of bands would come out of the studio. They're like, you're so much better. It's like, actually, yes and no. Definitely it brings out the, holy shit, I'm a terrible musician when you get into the studio and you think, like, you're like, man, when I'm shredding with all my delay and all these things on stuff, I'm so phenomenal. And then you record a clean line, you're like, oh, shit. Like, can you maybe just, like, saturate that stuff?
It's hearing the vocals in the booth super dry, and the singer's just like, can I get like a little bit of reverb? We're like, no, we're not. Just sing the song. You're a singer, just sing it. And then you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
That's where I learned that there's a difference between just singing on top of a track and resonating with the track.
Yeah.
Like the producer we were working with, Brad Nickel, he actually, the last album that we never ended up releasing because we broke up before that, but he spent a couple of years. I feel bad actually. He gave us he did it all just out of his heart, right? He was a great friend of ours, and we ended up not releasing it. So he put in a lot of time. Hopefully we're talking about actually doing the vocals here and finishing it, but
that's really the cool. Cetra one, right?
Cetra one, yeah. But through him, it was like I'd been singing these songs for 3 years, and so I'd be in the booth, we start tracking them, and then he'd just be like, yeah, it doesn't really fit. We're going to go have a smoke, write something different. We'll be right back. And I'm like, oh, I like that. I thought that was good,
that,
right?
yeah.
And I had to like let go of my ego and being like, okay, maybe I'm just because I'm the singer doesn't mean I know the best out of everybody in the group, right? And let go and I found that musically over the years, the more I let go and kind of listen and accept, like it doesn't mean their way's the highway, but like the more I'm open to their ideas and then take it and form into a mix, I find that's helped me grow quite a bit, and getting outside of my shell and trying new things, right? Going from the heavy, Cetera was like a heavy metal, heavy rock, and then after that I went to Couch Cushion Fortress, which was like hip hop, R&B, right? So that was a big growth too. And I found even singing that, I noticed it was more natural. It felt like it was just easier.
That's so cool.
And I just had a blast doing it, and it was all singing kind of from the heart because I was just falling in love, and I was like, oh, this is easy. Stuff. It's all just coming out, and then playing shows, that was just a blast. Like playing music live definitely charges my batteries.
Yeah,
up, for sure.
That's cool.
It's like we'd play shows and get home from Vancouver at like 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, and then we'd have everyone over from the show, and we'd just stay up all night and talk about it and just have some drinks and just laugh and go to sleep whenever we all crash.
That's awesome.
I remember
it's a total opposite to me.
Yeah, and I remember my voice would be so tired, and I'd be like, oh, should I stop? Is this hurting my voice? And then I used to be like, no, it's just you're hardening it. It's going to stay that way now.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Too funny.
So what was your so when you were doing hip hop, what was your favorite cover?
Oh, Journey, Don't Stop Believing. That was a fun one to do.
Yeah,
well, we did actually.
Did you do any hip hop covers?
We did actually. We did a hip hop version of A Whole New World from Aladdin.
What?
Which is awesome. That was a blast.
Yeah, we did that live too.
We did it live.
The guys who were there, like, because there's a bit of crossover from our.
I honestly have no idea what that would even sound like.
Just trying to.
I'm trying to think
picture
like
that in my head.
It was very. It definitely had our sound to it. Like
that is awesome.
Jeremy, he made all the beats and stuff, and so he basically just.
So who was watching the movie just weeping, saying, "This is us.
This is us.
This is us."
Is there any recordings of that?
I think
there's got to be some somewhere
Maybe.
deep in the
It was a blast to do that.
Who was Princess Were you Jasmine again, Tyler?
No, he was Jasmine because I remember I got to say.
They pulled out the carpet for him.
I got to say
or whatever.
I got to say that line where you're like, "Don't you dare close your eyes." I got to do that one.
Oh.
Like, yes.
Yeah, doing those live, that was just a real fun moment. The people who loved it, and then the guys who were like, I can't listen to this and look cool.
Guys, yeah.
What'd you do to me? You're playing a song I don't like.
Yeah.
Holy, that's awesome.
Yeah, I got a beer. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa.
I remember we did. I always loved hip hop, and like since I always anything with a good beat that got me going, and like that was actually one of the things why I fell in love with Radiohead. Was their drummer was always doing these pop like kind of hip hop beats where like you couldn't help but move, and it was so funny because everyone's like, they're so obscure, hey, like it's crazy how like, and I'm like, well, not really.
No.
Like they're adding cool tones and effects and like just different sounds and stuff, but ultimately when you strip it down, and I love that about them. And so I remember like when we were together, like we'd always joke around and always be like rapping over things and stuff, and like, and I again with my memory always like knew like all these old like hip hop songs that I love, and I love old school hip hop, always have, like, and even 90s hip hop and stuff, and I love new school hip hop now. Like I can't believe how much like my daughters have, like, since she was been born, like I was mentioning, my dad was always like, that music's garbage when I was growing up. So since my daughter's been born, we created a playlist for her, and anything that she showed interest in, we added to her playlist.
Same. I got one for Jaden on
Spotify.
Awesome, right? Yeah,
It's,
put it on my list, Dad. Taste that song. Put it on my list.
dude, I love that you said that because that's my daughter. She's like, Dad, add that to my playlist.
Put it on the list.
Awesome.
And
then,
so both my girls, go ahead.
Yeah, you ever play a song that, like, imagine the first time you hear Darude Sandstorm, and Jaden was just like, oh, this song has got it going on. And I mean, that song was huge when we were all younger. Then it gets overplayed, and then it becomes like a meme, or becomes, whatever, and you forget that the root of it is like, that's super catchy. That was like, oh man, that's laser tag and roller skate rinks, and all these things growing up had that song playing, and the Mortal Kombat theme song.
Mortal Kombat.
Oh yeah.
And those things that, like, that was cool.
Laser tag.
tag.
Stardust. Was it Stardust?
Stardust, yeah.
I used to yell them.
All right, ladies, it's ladies' choice. We're going to reverse the rank, and if you want to go... Remember that reverse ring? It's like, oh shit, I can only go to the right.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
That Mortal Kombat reminds me of like running inside laser tag, and they always get mad, like, no running. It's like, well, then stop playing Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
But yeah, kids just get it. They just get the first time they hear some of those songs, and for us, it's like they don't care what decade it's from.
No.
Like nowadays, they just hear every type of music is now cross genre. Like
everything's under a different banner now, and I think that's one of the things that I honestly would have happened sooner is to get rid of labels. For some fucking reason, we're so into labels, labeling everything.
Because you had to go to HMV and find the spot it was in.
Well, I think what it is too is that like we like to put things in boxes so that it, like our brains, we don't like to burn lots of calories. So like we try to simplify things, but what we end up doing is
organizing it so you can find it.
But we also kind of rob people of the freedom of being able to just be what it is.
And I know that like
my daughter's gotten me like I can't believe how many times I've sung "Holy" by Justin Bieber in the last like month, and I absolutely love the song. And never thought I would absolutely love the song. And we've been playing it on guitar like crazy. She's so good. She can rap the entire Chance the Rapper like part. But it's so cute to see over 7 years her musical taste change, and now she'll say things like, "Hey, whoa, is that on my playlist?"
Yeah.
And she goes, "You can take that off my playlist." And like, or she'll hear a new song. She's like, "When's the beat gonna drop?" And you can see, and that was me. When's that beat gonna drop? So I'll never forget. We did a show. We won some huge thing for the Fox when they would do their seeds competitions. I think it was. And so one of the things we did was at the time they Plaza Nations, they would hold this Canada Day, huge, like 10,000 people.
Oh, that was a great stage.
Yeah, so we got asked to play that stage, and it was like, I remember we had a great live show. Like we always had a great live show, like lots of good energy and stuff. I was like, guys, we got to do Sabotage by Beastie Boys.
That's awesome.
And so we taught the guys Sabotage, and I never forget, like people being like, it was so different from what a band our style would actually do that it became kind of the most number one asked for song that we would do as a cover. Because I remember like that's one of the things I always felt too, and if I could tell anything to any like bands like as you're starting out, I sucked at learning lyrics to covers, which is weird because I was so good at remembering the songs that I really wanted to learn. But again, this goes back to like when other guys would go, "Hey, let's do this song," and I was like, "Eh," and I wouldn't learn the lyrics because I just wasn't into it or this. But realizing too that like again, we had outside people that would speak in that. I'll never forget. Somebody said, "Oh, Matt, you should do a cover of Katy Perry's Roar because you can sing as high as she can sing." Because I have a very high range, and so we did it, and it became this like
song's a banger. I don't care what anyone else says.
It became this super sought after song, and of course our bass player added like really like great dirty sound on the bass, and like it turned out phenomenal. So then somebody's like, "Well, can you do Taylor Swift?" And it's like, "Sure, why not?" Like so then actually that one I had done all myself. I like wrote, like I played everything in my home studio, and then that was actually kind of a bit of a challenge. Like, could I write it, sing it, mix it, and film a video for it all within like a 4-hour span, all myself. And I was like, I can totally do this, because that was something that like it was about putting out content quick. We were talking about just putting out content quick. So somebody asked to do Taylor Swift. To this day, my daughter thinks that I still wrote that Taylor Swift song.
That's funny.
But it is one of those things that like I know that like if it's amazing how if you're touring and you're gonna go on stage. I don't remember what we used to do, but I think it was for every 3 songs we had a cover. So for every 3 originals, we did a cover, and we would make it our own, and something that would also just be a cool experience for people, but one that I never forget the arguments that we got in over what freaking cover to choose, because it was like, let's choose Tool. And it's like, but that sounds like it didn't sound like us, but let's just say it's like, but that sounds exactly like us and we like it. And people are just going to stand there. But what if we did choose Katy Perry's Roar? And I remember the time too, people were like, what if you choose this? Like, why don't we play a Muse song? Well, let's play Radiohead. It's like, but you guys sound like choose something that really grabs their attention.
You'll learn so much playing a different genre. Even just if all you're doing is originals and learning that cover as a band, it's kind of freeing, because then you see like you understand how they wrote it, why it's such a great song.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you also think about it too. It's like when you got off stage in all those clubs, what was the first thing they put on after you got off?
Yeah.
Pop music.
Totally.
Usher, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Because it was the beat. Beat got you every time, right? You're like, oh my goodness, this is so good. So that was one thing that, man, we got in arguments over it. But now I think like, I love that the genres are blurring, like that you're starting to hear, like there's so many, like, I mean, look at Old Town Road. Like, frick, I love that song.
Yeah.
And what it did. And how the story of it, the fact that people are like, well, it's not country enough to be put on country radio, but then the country was like, well, we want it.
They had to.
Oh, I love it, man. And so stuff like that to me is, again, like you just be you. If you fucking think that rocks, just be you and be the best version of that and just go for it and let the chips fall. If people are like, I don't like it, it's like, I don't care. There's going to be other people around the world that will like it. Stop trying to. And I going back to what I think you and I like very similar is like just trying to please everybody. And I felt like it was this like, you can also have this false sense of humility. right? Like that it's like, I was worried to like, I was worried to be like, to say like, yeah, no, like I'm not really into that. Or like, I just, and it's weird. I think because in my upbringing, it was always very servant, like you serve people, especially being in the church, right? It was like, you don't even like, yeah, it's like you don't like. I remember like being told once from like a leader of a church that it's like, you know, you have a real problem with like authority, and I'm like, why is one person standing up telling everybody what to do? That's it. You have a problem with authority. I'm like, I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think part of that was my fear around. It's okay. You can be like confident and humble, right? There's a big difference between confident and arrogant.
Totally.
But confident and humble, and it's okay to be like, yeah, I'm not into that. It's like, and so I know even with my interviews and stuff, why I'd get so stressed out about being on camera. And even right now, this is the least amount that I've actually sweat in front of cameras, because it is still nerve-wracking for me, because I know that for myself, you know, as a kid, and I don't know what you guys were taught, but it was very like, you're either an extrovert or you're an introvert. And I remember always being like, I guess it would look like I was an extrovert, because as a kid also, I mean, we're always bubbly at home and stuff. That's one thing, that we're always this, you know, where we feel the safest will usually be who we are there. But I know when I'd get on stage, I understood that I needed to turn it on. And so I would turn it on for on stage. So when you're on tour and you're doing these things and you're turning it on, but you're not charging your batteries. And for me, I actually found it years later. I remember reading this book in psychology, and they were talking about how you can actually be in the middle. And when they described about being in the middle, that like it's somebody who, you know, and I was like, this is me. But I wasn't charging my batteries. And I think that's all of those things equated to why I was also getting sick, because I was turning it on, but never allowing myself to just kind of sit back in the middle, charge myself up. And again, that's just going back to like, you know, as you get older and stuff, and as you, as people speak into your life and you learn things about who you are, versus like, I'm not hung up into what I do. I would give up everything that I'm doing right now in a second to be at home and be full-time dad to my girls. But my wife is a way better parent. And so to me, I'll do whatever it takes as a team member to be able to provide the opportunity, because she's phenomenal, because we work as a team. But I'm not hung up into what I do. I just feel truly blessed that, like, even with you guys, like you guys are so like, you're gifted musicians and you're gifted in the industry, and there's like just fountains of knowledge. And like, it's a cool thing to be able to be in the room with you guys to hear your stories. And like, I'm so excited to get this stuff started, because I'm like, I feel like I'm monopolizing this like story already. Like, but it's like, I just can't wait to ask. Like, I had a million questions to ask. And I think that it's like one of those things that's just so cool to be able to look at like our lives and look at who you are. And I appreciate who you guys are. It's just so cool too that what you do is so awesome. Yeah. So like being able to speak about what you do and how awesome that is, but also the fact that who you are is awesome. I think that's where you really start to see yourself thrive. So in bands, that's where like being able to be transparent, authentic, and empathetic, those things, I think I would have had a completely different band, inter-band life with my bandmates, touring life, healthier touring life.
Because you're going to face adversity. It's not, that's the growth periods, and especially if you're really young, and if you're only, like say like a teenager and you're just gonna rock, like there's so much you're going to change. Like that question of like, well, who are you? If you don't know, well then that's also an okay thing to go and explore. And the people you surround yourself with, they're going to influence that a whole lot. So that's a really important choice. Like, I'm happy I grew up, like me and Tyler are only really friends due to like geography, really. We were neighbors. But it was at a good time. I'd moved from Edmonton. We were 10. That's and awesome. In the same neighborhood, growing neighborhood. And all the kids at that time, you eventually met each other. And you're like, well, I guess we're best friends. We live around the street from each other. And then everything else happens, but it's
oh, we're both in grade 8. Oh, we both go to the same school. Okay,
that's it. I guess we're best friends now.
I know, but that's one of the cool things. Like with our I mean, they say that like we come into like our prefrontal cortex. We come into who we are. Like, you know, I think for me, like it was into my 30s that I finally like kind of came into who I am. But I just wish that it would have been cool. Like even the conversation we're having now, fuck what I would have not given. Yeah. To just have that conversation, to know that like, hey Matt, it's okay to feel that way amongst the band members. And to say like, yeah, I'm just a little nervous. Like I really feel like I shit the brick on that song. Like, and like, cause I love that how you're saying like we were like as teens, like just knowing like it just wasn't something that I was used to. Again, going back to that like sports, you didn't talk about it, right? You talked about banging chicks, how awesome you scored goal, and then who's, you know, what like sports game is on TV, right? And it's like, but I wanted to open up and talk about these other things. And I think that balance in life is always key. It's always awesome. But being able to have that freedom to just be like, I'm thinking this, and it's like, oh, it's okay to feel that way, right? Like, it's like, and to know that that's okay. I just was so nervous, I think, to also share those things, and also to just let people down, let myself down. I was also like that perfectionism side of it, like going back to like, I look at it now, I'm like, holy shit, I was so freaking like religious with like 5-hour a night rehearsals, 5 days a week. We did that for like years. And I'm talking, holy shit, did we progress fast as a wicked ass band?
Yeah, that's
But like,
a lot.
I remember we were in the studio that week. By the end of the first week, we'd written a whole album. We were in our friend Ryan McAllister from at the time it was Dacona.
I remember that name. Yeah.
That dude's awesome. We went to kindergarten together. Super awesome guy. He taught me a lot as well. He actually, I have to give him a lot of, I don't know if I've ever even said it to him, but I've appreciated so much that like, without him even knowing, again, that listening is that one time, I can't remember who he was talking to, but I listened to him as he spoke about their experience signing and all that stuff. And it was like a huge eye-opening experience for me, because it also was like, what? Because like they had signed the quote unquote perfect deal. And I remember just like we ended up buying our trailer off them because they just dismantled as a band. Like they signed and dismantled.
No
like
way.
It was crazy. And but I don't even think he realized how much of what he had shared through his experience impacted the business decisions. Because like after the 5 days of us being a band, we'd recorded with him, and like through his contacts, I think somebody like a lawyer or something from Maverick Studios. Remember that? Or Maverick?
That rings a bell.
Madonna's label. Anyways, they
Isn't
they were in touch with it. It was like 5 days. And I remember being like, talking to my father-in-law and just being like, we got to slow this down, because I have no idea. I'd never been I'd been self-employed with my wife, but I'd never known the music industry. And that's when he taught me, he's like, business is business. And so it was like employing him to be my teacher for school. That's actually one thing that I always did too when we're on tour. Our tour stories, we have the fun tour stories and stuff like that, but whenever I was on tour, it was like listening to podcasts, trying to educate myself as much as possible, working. So I wasn't the most fun interviewer when they're like, tell us all the crazy stories. I'm like, well,
I sat quietly and reflected.
I'm listening to a novel right now, or, I'm listening to a podcast from a Stanford professor that's talking about blah, blah, and I'm also doing this. And then at the same time, I'm writing the album, but I'm also creating content here. So we're editing as we go. When we're on the train here, we're doing this. It's like, oh, sorry, you want to hear us throwing things out of hotel windows?
Yeah. I love silent reading.
Yeah, I love silent reading. Oh my goodness.
It's funny though, like young bands, like when you're kind of growing up as a band, like when you look at other bands for experience and what they're doing, like it's a small world, like having you be part of this and getting to work with you, because like me and Josh, Yuka was one of the bands we'd look up to, right? I remember looking on whatever Internet Explorer back then and just being like, oh, what are these guys doing?
We gotta go on MySpace.
was
Check
with
these guys out.
MySpace. It would have MySpace for sure.
Yeah.
And then, but that was like one thing, you start to dream. You're like, oh yeah, we'll get there. You're like, oh, I wonder what they're doing. And then you kind of like start to kind of model things after, and you can learn a lot that way. But then at the same time, you probably set unrealistic goals for yourself, because you should just kind of do it your way and figure out what.
Or what if we came together at the time, right? Like, and just was like why can hockey teams and soccer teams do it? Where they come together for the greater goal and the greater good. It's like, but when it comes to like a band, it's like, I remember even like one time hearing another musician be like, oh yeah, no, we don't, like if someone gets big here, like, oh, like that's going to ruin it for us all. And I remember just thinking like, wouldn't it be a good thing for us all that like, it would draw attention to like
The community.
And that was my sports mind was going back to like, I remember like hearing of like, somebody on a university would get notoriety, and then they're like, oh, they're looking at getting picked up by a professional team. Oh, and then now they're looking at a couple other guys on the team because like it drew eyes. But it wasn't like that in music. It was like, no, you got to be the best, and then that's it. And like, and
there's only so many spots for that number one hit, and everyone knows you're a competitor. Like you said, the band, they were upset that you opened for them, and you kind of stole the show. And they're
fully,
like,
yeah, and that's totally it. And that experience to me was like a huge eye opener. That it was like. It was a shit experience. And I remember just being like, let's like, we were not stoked. Like it didn't fire us up to even want to perform, even though we did, because we loved what we were doing at the time. Like, but it was like, it just was like, why weren't we just like coming together and wanting to like better their, experience? Because like, I felt honored that they'd asked us, like, we're here to make your experience. So we were doing the best we could for them, not just the audience, but for them too. Cause we wanted them to look good. Right? Like we wanted them to be proud. Like, yeah, these guys, we chose these guys, right? Like we chose these guys and we're stoked about it. And I remember I listened to a podcast of these comedians that would go on tour with guys that were absolutely garbage because they wanted to look better.
To be the best comedian
and I
in
thought,
the room.
That is insane. Like in my mind. And like, it was interesting because this one comedian ended up saying, he's like, that is absolute shit and the dumbest thing you could ever do. Because
what are you going to learn from?
Yeah.
You can't get that like, oh, wow, you watch that guy's set and you're like, that was super clever. That audience really appreciated that. But I mean, I guess that's your ego there, where you have to be okay with not being the best all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always liked having friends who are bigger than me and friends who are better than musicians than me. And then you're set.
That was an easy one for me.
Yeah.
I put it. That was actually, it's funny too, because I remember even being hung up on just things that, since we're talking about it, things that just didn't matter. Like the whole, I was always and anything I did, it was the 10,000 hours mentality. Like I gotta spend 10,000 hours mastering this. And then I remember like going on tour with the band. I was like, they're like, yeah, I just picked up guitar like 3 months ago. And I'm like, wait, what? And they're like, oh, we just track everything else. I'm like, wait, what? And then now though, I'm like, it's funny because somebody asked me something else. They're like, oh yeah, like you must, like, how do you feel? This was years ago. And they were like, actually, we were still touring at the time, so it was a long time ago. But they were asking like how I felt about like the fact that like there's like Nashville writing teams that will write for huge celebrities. I'm like, well, they're businesses. So like these celebrities at that status are businesses. You got to understand they can't have misses because of the stature that they're at. So they have teams that write for them, and they need to be putting out new product, new services all the time. So they have teams that go through, and then what they do is they go, okay, these ones actually I think will fit you. And ultimately, a good song is a good song, whether it's if you have a great melody, you can make it hip hop, you can make it pop, you can make it country, you can make it anything. As long as it's a great song, it's a great song. And it's interesting, they were asking me like, so does it annoy you that Bohemian Rhapsody was written by one person? And then they list like, I'm not going to say Taylor Swift, I can't remember what song it was, but it was like 23 writers. And I was like, I could care less, man. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Like they were almost wanting me to be offended or something. Yeah. And I was like,
they're not as authentic as I am.
I get a big kick out of the whole, like, there's ghostwriters and it's like, but you get somebody to like mix the song, you have somebody master the song. It's like this whole concept of like you need a finishing carpenter and a framer and a foundation guy like that.
Yeah.
How is that like not?
Yeah, the ghostwriter.
Okay. That's somebody who's doing a job within, and you can always you can take a song that somebody's written and then you can kind of mold it into your own thing. Like,
It's also like, isn't it cool that like we're just letting people be like maybe the person isn't gifted at writing, they're just gifted at singing and this, so maybe they do need that team to come alongside. So shouldn't we be more excited that like there's room for all of us?
Yeah.
As well as like think about the 23 people that got employed and paid to do that, and they're paid musicians, which was on my success list. Yeah. It'd be cool to be paid to do this, even a bit. Right, like I was just so stoked to get paid a little bit, and yeah, you're right. Like when we'd win like those competitions, getting the giant check for $5 or $10 or whatever, like I can't believe that just happened.
Wow.
Right, it was like such a cool thing, or like landing your first thing. Like, but the cool thing is that there is enough to go around for everybody, including studios, studio musicians, people that are doing. Like, I think that's one of the things that we need to look at more is building communities versus building like individuality.
Individual project. Like this one band is more than just a one band. It's not just one singer.
Yeah.
Or one songwriter.
Yeah. Yeah, and coming in and realizing we can complement each other, we can lift each other up, and I think that we would find much more success. And we are living in a day and age that you can start your career like in your 50s, in your 60s if you want. And that's the cool thing is like, just be yourself. Like I look now at some of like the bands and the artists that my parents introduced me to, and I still love, from like Neil Young to, the list goes on and on. Like, and I did a Fleetwood Mac cover like years ago again because I just was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that song. It's a great song. Like, and you're like, a great song's a great song. And so I think that's where I love, just in the world in general, that we're at the coolest place ever, that you can come and discover somebody online. They can use tools that are free to get to you. Like, that is the coolest thing as well. I mean, you don't have to pay. Like now, there was always these things too. Like I just remember this, like smoke and mirrors. It was like, what are we paying for exactly? And like, how's it getting into? Oh, you have to pay us more if you want to get it here. It's like
taxi or whatever.
Oh my goodness, dude, it drove me absolutely nuts. And I was like, there's just so much lying and so much like shit. And like, and I love now that somebody can write like a great, like I'm not gonna lie, man, I'm a Reddit junkie. My drummer got me onto it like years ago before tour, and like I live on it. I love Reddit. I love going on any given night, and there's guys like on Reddit live, they're just playing guitar, jamming, and I'm like, this is so cool. And they're jamming, no joke, dude. The guy barely knows how to play, and he's playing for like 11,000 people.
This is crazy.
Live. And I was like, you know what we would have fucking given for 11,000 people live one time?
Yeah.
And like I was gonna say, like I don't know if you guys saw that. Was it Travis Scott that teamed up with Fortnite? Did you see that?
Yeah, that's nuts,
dude. I was so excited about
smart.
that.
Yeah.
Did you
I
hear-
didn't see. What is this?
So he teamed up, but they were looking at like unique things that can be done, especially because there's no live concerts. And so Travis Scott teamed up with Fortnite, and they created like an avatar type style person for him.
Yeah.
And 27 million. No, okay, I'm gonna butcher. it.
Some
Maybe let's just say at
ridiculous
least some ridiculous, insane of
a
millions.
gajillion people.
Well, I've
Joined
heard
in live.
I've heard another one. They had one of the DJs.
Marshmallow or whatever.
That's what it was. Yeah.
But the cool thing,
same thing though. Hey. Yeah.
So that was why even for us too. Like I remember when we got asked for one of our singles to be put on Xbox and PlayStation.
Awesome.
And I remember like we were like, oh, absolutely, like without a question.
Do you remember Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 soundtrack and how that like?
That was.
Do you know that a lot of
fundamental.
the hip hop that I first found came from because I was like in the skate industry as a kid, and all the music that I would find would come from skate videos.
Yeah, like
That's where I found it.
Those are all burned into
Which is
my
YouTube
head.
now.
Yeah, exactly. I literally, when I hear a lot of the songs from the Tony Hawk 2 soundtrack, like I hear the next song, kind of like when you got an album you're used to, right?
Yeah,
And Song ends, you're like, oh, here it comes, I know it's coming.
Yeah.
Like I had that same thing, right?
Those games influenced my music a lot because I played those games a lot.
Yeah, those ones.
Yeah.
RPG games for me, a lot of the music in those were just
You kept
huge.
telling the guys like, yeah. I'm not even gonna go there. I was gonna say something so stupid. I'm like, we're gonna have to cut that out. No, it's true though. Like, but I look at those opportunities now that we have at our fingertips that we can be creating content. Like I've told this to so many like artists that I'm like, could you imagine if John Lennon was writing like imagine? Oh, it's funny I said the word twice. But he's writing it, and as he's writing it, he takes a little clip and he posts it. He's like, I'm just working on this right now.
Right?
Do you know how many times? And that's why a lot of times when I'll tell people about your social media, it's like, it's your story of who you are. I mean, with bands, it's your story. So stop worrying about posting perfection. Post your story. Good, bad, ugly, the quirkiness, the things.
The progress.
You know, yeah, we always want to
The
show,
journey, the
we want to
journey.
show the iceberg at the top, right? That like
Yeah.
the best bits of us. And I've actually had like clients of ours at the agency tell us like, I remember like talking to people and I've said like, so if I go to your social media channels, I should get a really good sense of who you are. And they're like, no. You're just that's just the best bits of what we do. Again, going back to that who you are versus what you do. And you can blend them, but like when you don't know who you are, it's very hard. Like we sniff it out, right? And like we're in a day and age when we're dying for like transparency. And I think that's one of the things that's so cool right now with artists that you're seeing is they're able to then go on. Like it's actually something that I appreciate. Taylor Swift's releasing these kind of more raw albums, even though again she's
the new stuff with the National that just
Love
came
it.
out. Ooh.
and it's
hot
like,
tracks.
but it's like also too, you can see that it's something that you and I probably could have written over like around the campfire.
And
Right, like they're not like, and I love that about it, that it's like providing these opportunities for these artists of all walks of life from all over the world to be able to just put like their phone in front of them and record these little clips. Because how cool would it be to go back now on John Lennon's story of his life, his
And see it.
feed, and go back down and be like, dude, remember when he started and I liked it? I was actually like, oh, that's cool, that's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, and when those things are available to you, I think that's why one of the things I love about the music industry is I love that people are creating every day. Like I just found another artist on TikTok that I just was like, he's a Cree artist that's phenomenal. And I was like, frickin' heck, man. And again, he pulled me in with the covers he was doing. So then it pulled me in with the covers because I was like, oh, I love how he did that, and brought me to his music, and I fell in love with his music. And I was like, this is so neat. And I think that that's one area where artists today just, holy smoke, like the platforms that are available, that what they've done is allowed themselves to just get into our ears so fast. We talked about it earlier, didn't we? Right, about not always having to be perfect, like being able to just release something, even the yeah
that because it's so easy to just get sucked in. You're like, oh, it's not done yet, it's not done, just a little bit more, right? And that's one thing that you showed us with like what you're just saying about not everything has to be polished, like show the real you, right? And I find myself like I'm drawn to that, right? Like when I see what someone's actually like, and like you can kind of smell if someone's being fake, right? And I get like that cringe feeling like when I'm watching some stuff, and that's a good gauge for me when I'm doing stuff, because if I start getting cringy, I'm like, oh, okay, let me do that again. But then that's also, I get in my head too much, like I'll film like the same thing like 15 times, and I'll be like, oh, okay, one of these is fine. And the more I do it, the more I'm like, just do it and stop paying attention to it and just put it out. Annie does that a lot with her stuff. She's really good with her Instagram.
she's very good at it.
She's got the Heart Cloverdale page, and she's like always putting try on and showing off new stuff, and when people see that, they get drawn in. And she's not like, it's not all produced, it's just
See, and I asked her about that, because I said, so like, have you always been like that? Because I wanted to learn from her. Like, she's just amazing. And I think that's one of the things that she knows who she is. She's confident in who she is. And obviously, like, you know, like she knows like who she is in the good, the bad, the ugly, the quirkiness. Like that's all the stuff that makes her her. And like that's one thing that inspires me a lot even. And like then I think about it like as a producer. Could you imagine if your producer was like, and like, okay, so let me backtrack. Remind me to go back to the producer part. But like, so my job has always been, and one thing my wife's taught me a lot, which is why we found such success in what we've done with like our photography business that we've run forever, which we still run, to the marketing agency, to content creation, to strategy, to everything, is that you know, my wife taught me to observe. Like I say a lot of times, I'm like, actually my job is to more just observe. And a lot of times what we do is like, it didn't matter who it was. Like I've had the honor of being able to photograph presidents to celebrities a lot. And one of my jobs when they come into a room is we'll just chill and sit back and just observe. And what I'm doing is, which is why the masks don't bother me at all, is I just want to watch the things that your body's saying, what your eyes are saying, when there's a genuine smile, when there's not a genuine smile, when you're putting it on. Because I'm all about capturing the emotion, the real emotion. So that's actually why I don't ever take portraits. I can't stand taking portraits because people want to take a shot of how they want to be perceived, and I want to take a photo of you or a video of you how you truly are, because there's so much beauty in that. So now let's go back to the producer. And then imagine if a producer, I would have loved, maybe it's because that's my love language, but you know what I mean? Like I would have loved a producer to have come along that way for me and observed, so that when it was like, and again, this is like wholly, like now I just think like how rad that would have been, has been like, even in my imperfection, be like, that's the heart right there. That's the heart we're looking for. Or that's the energy we're looking for right there. That's perfect. And that I never got. And I think that would be something that I'd say to like even any up and coming producers, is something that's like super important, is being able to be that person in the room where you're listening to anybody that comes in of any genre, of any, whoever it is, but to listen to what, because we're nervous when we get in there, but to like get a chance to like really sit down. And that's why even like, I remember there'd be times where like I'd sit down with like a client, we would just like have a coffee, or some of my favorite moments are like, you know, I'll never forget one morning having coffee with like David Suzuki. And texting my wife and be like, you're not gonna believe who I'm having coffee with, like before the shoot even started. And like, but it was so cool because I got to talk to them. And like, then when it was time to actually like for me to shoot, I knew exactly. I wasn't hoping to get a real emotion and a pure shot. I got it. I knew when it was. So I could actually just like sit back and be like, it's not there. And there it is. Yeah. And then there it was. So now when I actually think of what that could look like in a studio, like, but again, it takes like practicing and like honing those skills and realizing that like our body's natural state is atrophy. So we have to, I mean, I hate working out, but I like staying active. Yeah. But like, so those things like listening, I think that like a lot of times we've just dialed it back. Like it's just atrophy. Like it's not, we need to turn it on. And I think that like in a studio, what I wouldn't have given for that, like, you know what, Matt, that wasn't perfect, but that heart that's the one. Yeah. And like, and I think that's why sometimes I look back at some of the albums that were done, that there wasn't all of the digital stuff to correct it. And it's, in our standards today, it's probably pretty garbage, because it's like, whoa, they're way off key. Like they're not even on time. Like we're talking about like, you know, playing by click and stuff. It's like, they are so off. And we're like, exactly. The magic is there. So maybe the producer then was so good that they were like, they were listening. They're like, that's the magic of you guys. There it is right there.
That's good, yeah.
And I never got that. And I think maybe like the fact that you talked about Nichols, like
Brad Nickel, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe like that was the thing that made him so special too, is that maybe when producers would tell us in the meetings that they're going to be the next member of our band, maybe that's what made him so special, is that he was a good listener to like really listening. And then if you can do that with like, to take off that hat of like, okay, so Tyler's hat's off and I can put on now Dave's hat, like, and I can get that genuine, so it's good. And it's like, maybe that's what makes a good producer, a fucking brilliant producer. Totally. Is being able to do, like, I always like really love, like, obviously, like, you know, Daniel Lanois and all those guys for like, there's like just what they did, but I don't know what, maybe that's, I don't know what things look like. To be a
fly on the wall when all your favorite albums were recorded. You know?
I know, right? Like, but I just think now that I'm talking it through with you guys, maybe that's like something that I would like, actually I do know for sure I would have really appreciated that. Instead of being like, no, I really think that you should like blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like, well, it's like, no. Actually, I felt like, did you feel that heart? Like maybe talking that way. Like even you can use that in like, did you feel hyped in that one? Because I even remember too, once I was singing, like we were doing a song for a movie, and it was we took it as like, we were asked to do it in a different style than we'd ever done. And we wrote it specific because we're like, let's take this challenge on. Like it was not even our style, but I was singing it more emotional. And the song was like, needing like a happier type singing,
So,
and they're like smile. And I remember the guys in the band were like, so they were dicking around in front of me, making me smile because everything, even my voice changed when I was smiling.
Totally.
So they recognized that now that, now that I think, see, this is the thing. Like, why didn't we have these round table talks? Like, those times to be able to debrief and also too, like to listen to each other and to be like, oh, dude, thanks for telling me that, man. I really appreciate that because I was really worried about that. It's like, yeah, when we're in it today, like, and then of course too, like for me, it's like when you're paying $1,500 a day for the studio, it's fucking intimidating. Like, you're just like,
I gotta get this.
And then you're like, you know what, screw it, let's move on, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, it's all decent, dude, you're one take. I'm like, wait a minute, why'd you get 1 million takes?
Yeah.
That's fine, you're one take, let's move on. And it's like, yeah, but that heart wasn't there. And then those, when you listen back, when the recording's done, you're like, well, I'm not happy with that. And I've learned, I don't even.
That's the hard part, right? Because you want to, like, you want to be conscious of how much people are spending because they don't, like, people are trying to save money.
Yeah.
So sometimes you want to be like, oh, that's good, that's good enough, right?
That's it. Yeah, you gotta find kind of the happy balance there because you need to help the session along, but also at the same time you don't want to rush it along because then you're not even saving time at that point because everything that you got is no good
and
anymore,
it's that
because
fine
nobody's
line.
Happy with it at the end. There's a fine line with that.
They might think you don't care, right? When you're just like, no, I'm just trying to it actually is good enough. We're just trying to get on to the next because we can tell there's still this much time left and you only booked that
You're
much,
just
right?
building the case for having that meeting before you start the clock on the time. And like if you sat down with the studio and the producers, big $1 million studio, did they ever sit down with you like before the clock was ticking and like, hey guys, like what's the plan today? Like how are you feeling? What are we going to try to accomplish? What's our
that is one of those things.
What's the vision?
Again, though, it's like having the open platform for communication is just so key.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something for just like life in general and all relationships is like when you have things you don't talk about. And again, too, when you get excited and you get into a studio and you get just like tunnel vision and you get going and it's like, I don't have any regret with any of the albums we did because they all were, to me, lessons that I learned as I went. But I do think back now and I look at like in the studio, like I don't trust myself. I trust you. So what I would do though is that like it's like why? It's because I know the skills, the abilities, the talents, the gifts, like that you're gonna see things that I'm not seeing. You're gonna hear things that I'm not hearing, and you're gonna guide me like and then when it's like, oh yeah, like that's so cool that you're able to do that. So then you add on top of that, like also being able to be like, yeah, I could see that, I could really feel like when that was not genuine. It's like, oh, really? But if you have that open opportunity to talk that way, it's like maybe that will speed things up because it's like, oh, okay, cool, I trust you. And that's where I think, too, coming in, like that's a big thing. Like, I don't know if I ever really 100% trusted the producers that we went in with, but I trusted even like, I don't even know if I 100% sometimes trusted the guys in the band, right? Because it was like, it always seemed to me that there was like, if we had, we're going to be in the studio for a month, 29 days of that was going to be drums. Right?
But we just gotta set up the drums in the room and the mics. Get new heads on them and you gotta tighten it up. And
we gotta really go. That snare. Nope. Okay, let's go run out. Let's go rent another one. Well, there goes a day, right? Like, and then it was like vocals were like, oh, we're really running out of time, and it's like, great. Well, that's awesome. And so then instantly I'm rushed. I don't do well under like when I'm rushing. And now the more that I've learned about how our body actually just responds to rushing, I mean, we get in accidents. Again, like what I was talking about earlier about like not even showing empathy or listening. We don't listen. We rush things. We break things. Like we do so many shit things when we rush. Why would I ever expect my vocals to come, like me, to come across?
Totally, yeah.
When we've rushed the whole process. So then I now know that I found it disrespectful. Great, thank you. Like, so I'm paying for the other days as well with you guys. We went to the bank together, and now this is all being rushed through. Right, like, and I know that they weren't deliberately doing it. No. Like, it's just that, like, again, you go into like if they've never played in a studio, like I'll never forget, like somebody drew out, and it was something that just blew my mind. They're like, okay, here we go, we're doing a little lesson. We got to the studio, and we drew out what a waveform looks like, which everybody in a recording studio knows what they're looking at. You know how to mix because you know where the kick sits. And like even doesn't matter what kick you bring in, you know where it should sit, and then you can always manipulate and break the rules from there. But you know where a bass is going to sit, and then you know where that like guitar is going to sit, and then the synth is going to sit, and then like whatever other instruments. Where the fuck does the like voice go? Because you've taken it up so much now. So if we don't EQ these things in here, the wave, we only have so much to work with. So that's why the Dr. Z was garbage.
I was just going to say,
it was
that's
here.
like because it's like you try to get so much sound out of stuff, but in the mix, then you're backing stuff off so that you have room for the other stuff to go in.
So then like you'd spend forever. Whereas like maybe, and this is one thing that I did appreciate is like we had one producer that did work with us going into the studio to talk about things. So it was like we're not paying like in the studio to like come to realize like your amp doesn't work. We're gonna need to go find another amp. Like,
yeah, expensive lessons.
Exactly. So that I appreciated. Again, the communication. So that was really important. Like, and there might be people listening to this that are just like, oh, I really could care less about that stuff. I just want to get in. But like, so now fast forward to like the band has decided, like Yuka's decided that we're all just gonna take a little bit of a break, and we all said too that we'll come back to when we know the pull is there. Like I said, there's no better time. You can start whenever you want. That's a great thing about where life is at right now. And I mean, even for myself, like I have, I know that I have the opportunity to also write for other artists, which I've done, or write for like TV and film. Like I've been blessed to be able to gather enough connections with people to be able to have that if I want. I do love the idea of working with other artists, like and writing for them, because I just love seeing guys get excited of like, I never thought of that. Like it's because I know that feeling when I felt it too. But I know that like I'd always wanted to do my own album, and so when my daughter was first, like Shadows of the Moon was on the album, so I did an album and wrote, and I had written the songs. Like, I mean, I have a million songs, so I just chose like a handful of them that like my daughter liked, and then had my own home studio and decided that I was going to play everything, record everything, mix everything, do it all myself, because I was like, why not? It's always been one of those things I want to try, and it just made me realize how terrible I am as a musician. Like I was like, okay. I thought I was actually okay at drums. I'm clearly shit at drums. So then I just was like, I better program drums because I'm so bad at this. Then I was like, oh, I'm going to play bass live because I totally can groove. And it was garbage. And then I was like, and I'm going to do this. Like, luckily, like, I mean, I've been playing guitar for like majority of my life. Like, so that I'm always comfortable with. But like, yeah, I just, like, it's amazing. That is one thing that I will say is like, if you want to be humbled, go to the studio.
Yeah.
You hear yourself
everything.
back.
Oh, you hear it.
It's
every mistake in brilliant detail.
It's an expensive, humbling opportunity is to go in and you're just like, I'm not as good as I thought. Because you can really cheat. And the cool thing is that you can cheat live because it's an experience. So it's more than just what you're hearing as a clean track. Like, you know, the way that like everybody's moving on stage and incorporating. For us, it was always about the audience feeling like they were a part of it, that they were joining it. It wasn't just them being spoken at, it was being spoken with, that they were, you know, they were feeling the stories, they're feeling the emotion behind it. It was all those things. But in the studio, when you're there and there is nobody else and it's clean and it's dry and you're like, oh wow, this is like, you know, we've been shredding this live for so long and it works so well. Till we strip all that stuff off and realize there's like half of these are wrong notes.
Yeah.
But the delays were taking it all and like blending it so you didn't hear it, but that's not going to work. So I definitely like know that, you know, hey, if you want to be humbled, go and like, don't listen to anything or any advice that I'm giving. Just go into the studio.
Just go take a listen direct. Yeah. I remember that being a challenge for sure. Hearing my voice for the first time and even playing guitar to a click. Cause like, you're just so used to just, you get excited, I guess, really, right? You start playing, you're like speeding up, and then you start slowing down.
Do you remember when we saw Pearl Jam live, and the drunker he got into that bottle of wine, the faster Even Flow got, and it was great.
Yeah.
But you're like, this is the fastest version of Even Flow, and the longest, most awesome guitar solo, and we were in like the worst seats, but it was still great.
It was amazing.
And then you think, well, obviously that's a different experience than when they recorded it, but you just see live, like it's just two different beasts, I guess.
Oh yeah, totally different.
Yeah, no, and then there's a lot of recordings that like the first recording we ever did, we did like live off the floor, and we didn't play to a click because we hadn't practiced to a click. So
it wouldn't have worked.
So it wouldn't have worked. And you could definitely hear like when the songs got heavy, it was just like, whoa, here we go, it's speeding up. And
But there's something that push-pull though that's exciting.
Sometimes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You win.
Not in our case though, because it was just inexperience really. But yeah, there's definitely some of that. Like actually, we were recording the Seabillies here, and they don't record to a click, and we filmed them out front. And I remember having to, like, when we edited, there was a couple different takes of the song, so I could use take 1 and take 3 together because they were so tight that they might as well have been playing to a click. Which
No
is really
way.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, that's not usual.
No, it was really good
Yeah.
because I was like, wow, I can keep interlacing.
So what about
these.
live? How like because they were doing it live
Yeah,
for the recording.
yeah.
But what about when there's an audience? Like I wonder what that would be.
Yeah, that would be
because you know how like you
interesting,
get that little sense of like you're like, yeah, because I remember that too. Even it's like, oh, we're all good, and all of a sudden like that like the energy picks up or whatever it may be, and then you're like, okay, no, we're speeding up a little bit here.
Oh,
like
they're pretty solid.
That's crazy, man. That's wicked.
They're good.
That's brilliant. To me, that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it was handy. That's for sure. Being able to put that together, because that's a challenge, right?
Oh my goodness, that's cool. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nice thing about masks right now. With when you're editing video together, is like, it could be pretty close, but like could be a little bit off as long as the head's moving at the same time. It's like, oh, okay, that works, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. I just talking. It's not. It's one of those things that, like, again, like turning it on for work is something that I know, but I don't like hearing my voice. So it's like, and I also feel that I don't have anything to, like, if I'm brutally honest, like a lot of times, like, worth value to share. Like, it's just kind of, I mean, I have my experiences and stuff like that, and the way that we think and stuff, and like, and ultimately too, I am an open book. Like, I'm not worried about sharing, like, the honesty of, like, and that stuff that we can dive into in further podcasts and stuff is like literally opening me up and like, okay, let's go for it. And you can share like where you wasted money, what you wasted money on, because there's gonna be a lot of bands that are gonna think that they need to do those things as well. And then where we found the most success, that even like, because I do like want bands. I just it gets me so excited that, like, to think of like the young me and being able to speak to that, and that there's millions of them out there, and going like, here's a few tools that we can give you, and like all of us, if we all give a few tools, that's a lot of tools that they're getting.
Totally.
Like right off the top.
Yeah.
And like, to me, it's like, I think it's going to help catapult, and I think that's also why we're seeing other artists catapult quicker, is because they are having opportunity. And prime example for me is like, I remember when I first started skateboarding, I would watch skate videos, and I would like pause the VHS like, oh, what did he do there? And I was trying to see like what he was doing. Now they slow-mo on YouTube, and they're like, yep. And like, there's the 7-year-old kid doing stuff that like I dreamt about doing. And they're doing it when they can break their bones and heal within 2 days. And you're like, no wonder they've surpassed us, because they have the opportunity. So I think that, like, why hasn't the music industry gotten to that place? Like, why have we not given those, like, I have no problems giving every tip, trick, every whatever it may be, because I want to see them. I'm excited to see our world and where our world could go. Hence why, like, with my daughter, like, I've shared this story before, like with both my daughters actually, that like my wife and I waited to have kids because, like, I mean, I was totally fine introducing, I was totally fine if we had more of my wife, like little versions of my wife, because my wife's phenomenal. I just want to be more like her, but I was clearly not okay with more of me. And so we worked really hard. We recognized that, again, the whole observing and like doing research and stuff, like we knew that they were able to, see things like parents could pass on even in the DNA, like obesity, if the parents were obese, like when they had the kids, or things like, what about things like anxiety, depression, those things. Like, we just wanted to like educate ourselves, and we knew the struggles that we had with things. And then I wanted to be able to, as parents, remove as much of me as possible, so my children, whatever they were going to be, we didn't know what we were having, but would have the best and the opportunity just to be themselves, whatever that looked like. So I knew that, like, the other thing, too, is going back to what we were talking about earlier, is like, I've never been satisfied with good. I want to do my best to be as great as I can. And so we did a lot of like inner healing, counseling, like working on what I ended up realizing it wasn't me, actually. It was just habits that I thought was me. And that was one of the things that I realized. I'm like, man, I would have passed on all these like really, really bad habits that, I called them like my scars, like things that happened to me or things that I did to myself. And then I was like, well, that's me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, actually. I just needed somebody who knew how to ask the questions, or somebody that knew how to get it out of me to help, so that I could actually just bring it to the surface to deal with it, so that I realized that I wouldn't pass it on. Like, when you hear things like in my family, because my family's background is German and Russian, it was like, well, that's the German in us. I was like, actually, it's the asshole in you.
Yeah, that's just the
right?
asshole.
Like, that's just the asshole speaking. Like, and you realize that because we love to have excuses for things. And so I think that, like, to me, it's like, if we can share all of the things that we've learned and be able to pass them on to people, like, I don't even, the potential for where things can speed up is phenomenal.
Totally. And
I so like would love to know that we played even a small little part in seeing people like just thrive in what they were like, in what they love.
Yeah, and I love the idea about, bringing people together, like even other studios, like get engineers from other studios in here and just get to know them, learn different tricks, and and what we've learned from other musicians and other
their favorite projects they worked on, stuff they learned when they didn't think. They just thought it was another everyday job, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, actually, that I didn't expect to learn so much from something I didn't really think I could learn anything from.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, there's tons of that. And then even outside the music world, right? Like
lots of different things.
That's another thing about having you part of the podcast. It's great because you've got way more than just music to offer people help with, right? Like all kinds of video expertise, you know, there's strategies and stuff that like maybe we've done the wrong way before, right? And you learn the hard way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I'm totally like excited about it, honored. And I also think too, like one of the things that I look forward to and what I want to do even more though is I want to be able to include the people that are watching and the people that are listening to be able to connect and get back in touch, because this is all about a community. And it's not just one way. Like that's one thing that I appreciated when we were talking earlier, even like when we were off camera, was that like it's not about speaking at each other. It's not speaking over each other. It's actually speaking with each other. That like I want to see you guys succeed today too in what you're doing, and I know you feel the same way for me.
Totally.
And for our families and like for our communities, and like, you know, like I've always said, like you kind of blossom where you're planted, and like we're really blessed that where we're planted here in British Columbia is absolutely gorgeous, and I feel truly blessed to like every day, especially this last year, just felt truly blessed to wake up and be like, man, I can't believe I live here, because it's an honor. It's
pretty nice.
Yeah,
it's an honor.
Lucky
from. Oh man, everything. I just feel like truly blessed. And so to be able to like to help people, I think is just something that I think is in humanity in general. I think when we care for humanity first, we win every time. And by win, I mean that like, you know, when to me, like when I look at what success looks like in my life, it's like deep inner happiness, and not in what I do, but just in who I am.
Totally.
That like if everything got stripped away, that I'm just am absolutely like truly deeply happy in my soul. That totally. Back to that whole thing back at the beginning, we were talking about singing and just mumbling stuff, but that just being okay with mumbling stuff, and it doesn't ever have to go anywhere. But I know that that's like, it just feels so good because it's me.
Yeah,
it's me. Right. And I think that that's why like there's so much cool stuff that I can't wait to hear back from people too that will have questions, or the cool thing too is things that they can teach us as well. Cause
totally.
I'm so stoked to learn like I think this Studio Pineapple like is so phenomenal. And like, it's got such a great, like the moment you came in, like you just feel at ease, which is a huge thing, is to come in and to feel like you're able to be yourself. And so it's like, how cool is it to be able to know that people can say, hey, this is actually one of the things that I didn't really like about coming into a studio. And it's like, oh, sweet, because maybe we're doing
that.
Maybe we're doing it. And we don't even know.
We could start. We could make it feel really pretentious if we.
Yeah, totally.
Is that what we're supposed to do?
Yeah.
Pinkies up, gentlemen.
Yeah. But hey, again too, that's like if you have people coming in that. It's like letting people know, just be yourself, be who you are, because if you come in and this is the way you're, like, we want you can be that person, right? Like we don't want you to think you have to be a certain way, or because that is one thing that I do remember, that as we were talking earlier, that I remember certain studios were famous for bands coming in and they all started sounding the same when they left.
Yeah, there's a certain sound.
That was something I remember being a bit worried about.
Like Motown, the Hits Factory, just run them through the record label, all through the same studio, and it's got that same vibe.
Well, that was do you remember, what was that song? There was a song, Serena Ryder, I think it was. Anyways, I don't know if that was the right artist, but anyways, it was somebody who had written a song for Adele. Adele had enough like her writing team had enough songs for her. So they sold it to somebody else. And then I remember reading it, and I think I might not be her, don't quote me on that. But I remember listening to the song and being like, oh my goodness, that is Adele, it wasn't Adele. They had sold it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it's interesting because at first I was kind of like, well, that's a bit odd. And then I remember thinking like, actually, it's so freaking cool that they're able to do that. Like it's such, again, when you just kind of open yourself up to like, it doesn't have to look a certain way.
Yeah.
So success to maybe me going forward is that maybe I don't ever tour again, but I get to write, like I've written so many kids songs and lullabies that are unbelievable that only my daughters know and have asked me not to play for anybody at this moment because they love that it's theirs.
That's funny.
And yet I've had other parents ask me like, oh, like, are you going to put out an album with kids songs? It's kind of cool because I'm thinking that's something that actually is kind of neat that I could actually do. Like,
sounds like she's got to be the producer of that album.
She is such.
She'll let you know what's good, what's not.
Oh man, dude, she's the girl that like, she's my stylist. She's my, like, again, why I've always been drawn to children is the honesty that they have.
Yeah, I love
like,
that.
Before I leave, I'll dress and I'll be like, sweetie, what do you think? She's like, that's just not your style, Dad. And I love that. In fact, she said it to my wife the other day. She said a comment to my wife. She's not meaning it in any way to be rude. She's just being honest because she's seen my wife's genuine look.
I think my favorite story from recently, Tyler's been teaching some kids piano, right? And what did that kid say to you again, Ty? He's like 3. He's like, I'm a pretty... Yeah, he's like,
he's just like, I'm kind of a cool guy. And
Oh yeah.
and he just knew, and he just pulled it off. And he's like, yeah,
he
hey,
did like
hey.
this single thing, like, I'm kind of a cool guy.
And he knew, and you're like, wow, he's so confident,
I
and he's
love
3.
it. I love
It
it.
was hilarious. Part
That's
of the cool guy
adorable.
club.
At 3.
Well,
Yeah.
want to? I don't know. How do we go into wrapping it up?
Tyler sings the theme song.
Because
Yeah.
otherwise we're gonna have way too much.
Well, yeah, I guess the main takeaway from this that we're excited about is being able to kind of bring people together, and now is the time to think outside the box, right? Like everything's changing so much. That's what we're trying to do here.
Come up with some new ideas about going forward in the industry and
Yeah, like
everything actually.
everything's changing around us. Like even like TikTok, like everyone's making music on that now, and it's so crazy and popular. Everyone keeps saying like make music for TikTok, and I'm like, I thought it was just funny, goofy videos, but apparently like you can actually do pretty well with that now. And there's so many ways to use social media to your advantage and to connect and have people get to know you. And now it's like, I know for me, when I watch YouTube, people like doing podcasts or even just having their own shows, you start to feel like you get to know them, right? So people can get to know their favorite artists and feel like part of their development and growth, and you know, feel like they're part of their songs, right? So there's tons of stuff, and we're still learning and growing as we go, and we're excited to kind of bring guests in and learn from them, and hopefully some musical guests, you know, since we're in a studio.
Yeah.
Why not, right? Yeah, that's what we're excited for.
Yeah, it's gonna be good going forward.
Yeah, I'm excited. I appreciate being involved in this. This excites me so much.
Oh, thanks for being part of it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Cool.
Well, thanks for tuning in to the Pineapple Podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Cue the music.